get that going. It's recording.
I wanted to see. What I was gonna do is
3, 2, 1. You can do it. Okay, we're
try
live,
and
but
get you some.
cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you can do it. It doesn't matter. You can talk and
I was
do that.
I was thinking about pulling up some photos for
You're a
you.
woman. If you can't do 16 things at once, we got issues.
A
Damn
woman
it.
with kids.
Yes.
I'm a mom.
So Ann, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for
And you
having
can
me.
do that. Like I said, you do that. I mean,
Appreciate you.
if people watch it, it matter. They're gonna be listening later. The
People
whole
are
thing-
like this all the time anyway in this
Yeah.
day and age, right?
So if somebody's not doing it, we're gonna be in trouble.
This is true.
Maybe we should do that, even if we're not doing it.
Just
That's
pretend.
a good note for future cast.
Just get our phones out and just
Have
kind of
someone
sit there
get
and
on there and
just
flip
touch
through.
it. We didn't even have to be on. Just sit there and look down and just touch it every once
So
in a
we
while.
can identify with everybody out
Yeah,
there.
see.
I hear you.
Tech fluid people. I just made that up right now.
tech
You
fluid.
didn't know that
Is
was
that
real.
a new term?
Right now, because I made that shit up
Better
right now.
You just coined a phrase.
Yeah, I'm tech fluid.
Just
Like
off.
sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't. I guess. Fuck, I don't
You're just
know,
full
maybe-
of surprises.
Yeah, I got all that kind of business, man. I don't know how the hell,
I like that tech fluid.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell it means.
Like one
but-
day you could have a flip phone, or you could just go straight up Apple, or you could just go straight to landline.
I
Your
would
tech
love to
fluid.
do that.
Tech fluid. You know they're making like these robots they have now, right?
The sex robots.
No, not those. Not the one you have in your closet at home, Jay. But I'm
Sorry,
talking about
okay.
like they have. My son was talking to me. My son was talking to me and his dad about this, talking about these robots, and they were sitting there and they look like us and they
Yeah.
make facial expressions and people can talk to this reporter said, hey, do you think that you guys are going to take over one day? And he said, yeah, I think that, we're going to basically yes, but then he says, but don't worry, you guys are friends and we're going to treat you well. And then he kind of giggled and the reporter lets out this nervous giggle and I'm like, see, why are they making these things? Like, why are they doing this? This is what we get.
They're
This is
making
what
them-
we get.
No, there's a guy either in Korea or Japan that's trying to marry his sex robot.
Japan, yeah.
Yeah,
I had read
it's
that
and
recently.
they're making these things. Like, have y'all watched Westworld?
No, Chris
On
watches
HBO.
that. Chris watches
That's
that.
what it's about.
Yeah.
Like lifelike robots.
See, I don't know why we're
but
doing
the
this.
technology's gone so far you can't tell the difference.
Have you seen the one in Boston Medical?
Uh-uh.
It like jogs, does flips.
Oh, yeah.
It's
What?
turning, squatting,
Yes.
jumping, and it's not super fluid, but they're like rolling random shit at it, and it's reacting to whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Because you know how they learn. From what Joseph was telling me, because he reads up on this. This isn't me, right? This is Joseph spitting knowledge, but my son is Joseph. So he tells me that they're not necessarily like programmed with it. That they learn the way we learn from like internet. So it's data that they can
Through
access,
interaction.
right?
Yeah,
And so this is how
kinda,
they're
yeah,
learning,
yeah.
right? Tell me
Repeated
that they're not
patterns.
going to, see, this is the epitome of
I've
you
always
gonna
thought,
learn.
there was a good
You gonna
movie
learn.
about that with Tom Cruise. I forget the name of it now, where they showed basically if we were ever to be invaded, the aliens would actually be robots.
Yeah,
There would be some type of robotic.
with the little girl and the.
Yeah, and
Can't remember,
and
yeah.
that's how they would come, and they would just use us for the resources they needed to move on to the
Right.
next system. I thought that makes the most sense of anything.
Well, hopefully they all feel like that one guy did. And you're friends. We'll be nice to you. Like,
Yeah.
please do.
So here's the deal. I think we're in a heap of shit, but not in our lifetime. Because
Well, I
it's like
agree.
when you
I would agree with
equate the human brain to a computer right now, is that sorry, I just got a message to turn it up a little bit.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that before I say this.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Hey, you got the mission already, man. So when you do that, it would be like taking, I don't know if it was 100 million or 100 billion of our current high-end computers that you can purchase, and somehow fusing them all together would be one human brain, at the rate in which it processes information.
Oh, okay. Yes.
and does
yes.
all those things. So
Right.
we've got time.
I don't know how much time they say that with
Famous
AI,
last
that-
words. You got
Yeah.
some time.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
not our lifetime. Our kids are screwed.
I don't know. I've heard that artificial intelligence, the time where it could happen, will be within our lifetimes, where it'll just be spontaneous artificial intelligence.
I heard one of those, but
Like
that was based on that.
2047.
Do you remember the deal where the two computers were talking to each other and they
Yes.
freaked out and shut them off?
Yes.
They found out later. They went back and they looked through everything and scrutinized it, and they basically said that they were going gibberish on each other, which is why it was accelerating and going faster, because they weren't understanding each other, and it looked like they were trying to change the way they were communicating, and it just
They were
couldn't-
trying to adapt,
they
but
were
they
trying,
didn't
but
have
it-
that.
it just
They
didn't
weren't
work.
tech fluid enough to do
Oh,
that.
tech fluid, see.
I think you should put it on a
Goes back
shirt.
to tech fluidity.
I'm gonna do it.
Tech fluidity.
I'm actually gonna do that.
It's a thing.
I've got the thing.
It is.
It's a
Seriously,
thing.
I'm gonna make the T-shirt.
Do
Everything's
it.
fluid.
Here,
I
we're
should
gonna
get
do it.
one. I should
Yeah.
get
We're
one.
gonna
Everything.
do
Speaking
it.
of T-shirts, I come bearing gifts.
Oh, well, thank you.
Can I give? Can I
Yeah,
give you a
please. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
gift? So
We'll have to verbally describe it for the people. that
that's
listen
okay.
later.
That's okay. So because you had me on, I brought you these, so you know how to get hold of me. But I brought you that from the PD
Nice.
because I figured you could put it somewhere, like in an office or something.
Can I
don't
hurt
know.
somebody with it, or is
You-
that no? That's brutality.
You probably can.
No, but if I'm not an officer and I hurt somebody, it's not.
Then it's a
brutality.
thing. That's a problem.
That's just straight assault, right?
They can't see me right now, right?
No, yeah, you can't see that eye.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Awesome, thank you.
So I brought you that from the PD, right?
Yeah.
Because we got to represent. And then I brought you a little patch from Caliber Press because I
sweet.
also teach street survival seminars for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we'll have to
And
talk about that off air.
I
Definitely.
brought you a coin.
Oh, amazing.
Wow.
Relentless Defender Apparel. They made these coins. This was from last year's Police Week, and that was the number that we were honoring that year.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Awesome.
And of course, I have some for my boy
Very
Jay
cool.
over there.
Yeah.
So take that over there. And then
Thank
I
you.
have.
Sweet.
Now I was trying to look at you on the YouTube and try to gauge your size, so I brought you a shirt.
I'm interested. If you bring an extra small, I'm gonna,
It's extra
Okay.
swole.
it's gonna be
So-
exit right out that
No,
window.
I didn't bring you a medium either. Okay,
That's all I
So
wear.
I'm gonna let you choose between the two. So I brought you this
Oh,
Relentless
wow.
Defender
That's pretty
shirt,
dope.
Sweet, yeah.
223.
Oh,
Right,
it's a good
that's
caliber.
Nice.
I like that,
It's
yeah.
a part of our patriotically correct line, and I say our because I don't work for them. I don't sell their stuff, but I am one of their ambassadors. So that just basically means I get to go out and give away free
Yeah,
stuff, right?
which is the best.
Yes, and then I got this one.
Oh,
The
that's
trigger
really
warning.
Really good one for you right there.
Trigger warning.
It's
I
the
hope
trigger
That's a
these are your
really good one
size,
for you
but
right there.
They are close cut. They're athletic cut shirts.
Yeah, and it's that the next level and canvas are really
Yes,
the same.
great
XLR.
shirts.
Perfect.
So you pick the one you want.
Oh, I trigger,
Trigger
warning.
I
warning.
figured.
It has to be
Yeah,
I figured.
you know,
And then
I'm
you
not
get the
trying to-
leftovers, Jay.
Awesome, I appreciate that.
So
Thank
that's
you.
for you from me.
And as I said, you're gonna get plenty of gifts on the way out. So good thing you have an SUV.
All right.
Yeah, we'll just say SUV. We won't say which one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you want to just keep that on the.
You know, it's the high end. What's Maserati SUV?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
That actually is a really badass.
Yeah, that nice.
I don't
pretty
know what
black
it is
one.
with guys in those types of cars. They must teach you
What?
that in guy school. Like they must put
Guy
a chip
school.
in your brain. Yeah.
Maseratis. and-
Maseratis and Lamborghinis.
I
Ferraris.
don't know what it is about that.
I kind of like American Muscle a little better though.
I'm all about Dodge
70s.
and Ford.
Himikuna.
Yeah, that GT, that Ford GT is nice, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. See, trucks. I was always a GMC Chevy.
Those are
for
nice.
The trucks. The Fords always just felt just. I was kind of like they're really close to making everything right, but they're just not quite there. And it's not about durability or anything. It's just
What
when
is
I
it?
sat in it, it
Didn't hug your booty?
Yeah, it didn't feel right.
Mm,
And then
I get it.
the other part of that is I
It's
got
gotta
some
feel
buddies
right.
on the Chevy side of things, so that discount
I was
really
waiting
helps
for that
me.
to come out.
That helps me feel right at home, if you know what I'm saying. I'm just like,
I think
ugh.
Dodges are sexy.
Have you seen the new trucks?
Oh,
Yeah.
they're nice.
Yeah,
the
no,
new
those-
Dodges
yeah.
are real
Yeah,
nice.
I'm good with the
real,
new ones.
Real
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
real nice, real nice. But
Yeah.
at this point, I have to get another car. So at this point, it's like I love whatever I get.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Well, you know, and you got the family, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, my baby, he's 23.
Oh well,
Well, he's not my
what about-
baby. He's one of my babies. He's my oldest of my
Yeah.
babies. So he's 23. He's out on his own. Lives
Okay.
with his girlfriend.
Okay.
And then my little one, she's my little dove, and she is about to be 15. So
Oh, crap.
Just a couple
You know.
more years.
yeah, you're good.
Just
Okay.
fly
she's
the
gonna be in
coop.
her own car pretty soon.
Yeah, I
Fly
know.
the coop.
She
And
better
she
start.
likes that Soul, that Kia Soul.
Kia Soul.
Oh, years ago, my wife had one.
That's a cute
cute
little
little
girl
car.
car.
Man, they're zippy, they're quick,
Mhm.
and I'll tell you this: her because she's small woman, 5'2", 5'3",
Mhm.
depends what shoe she's wearing, but she loved it because the front end and the way the engine is it's so compact and small. Like it was never an issue of like where's the front type
Yeah.
situation.
Mhm.
And maneuvering, everything was
Yeah.
great.
I've driven
Safety's
one,
awesome. Yeah.
rental,
Yeah.
and they're roomy. They're a lot bigger inside than people think.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it's
So,
shocking.
Yeah, that's what she's
Absolutely.
looking to get. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. So obviously, I'm gonna transition this in awkwardly. I hate doing transitions, but we're all
Was this
veterans.
From your AR to your pistol.
I've not been. Yeah, I know. I've not been a police officer, so I'm outnumbered 2-1 in the police officer situation.
war
here.
fighters, nonetheless, right?
Yeah, we got it, but I think I could hold my own. Maybe depends on if it's early or late in the day, but we'll see. We'll go roll later. I have
Hey,
grass in
let's
the back.
do
I don't
it.
have mats, but I have grass. Does that work? There's no poop. It's in the
I got some mats. I can bring some over sometime.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, on the next visit. I'll be right there.
Well,
ancestor training. You've done some jiu-jitsu.
Yes,
bit.
I saw pictures.
I've trained, but nowhere near the level I would like to have been able to. Now, and I can't. And I'm not going to bullshit. I don't want to say been able to, but nowhere near the level of consistency I would have hoped to have given to it.
Yeah, it takes work.
It takes discipline to get in there every day. So, but there's a different journey I'm on right now. So
I know.
But I love jiu-jitsu. I think every cop in the United States should be trained in jiu-jitsu, have a working knowledge of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Mixed with a little judo, mixed with the little Thai fighting.
Yes, some good striking, boxing skills, whatever.
Yes. But foundational jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely, I would agree completely.
And I think a lot of cage work or wall work, depending on where you are.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get that? That's right now with police work. There's no consistency in defensive tactics training at all. You go to one department and they're teaching pressure points, which is a joke. And then you go to another one, and I've seen it where they've taught. I don't know if any departments still are doing it, but I know some local ones were actually teaching Krav Maga, which there's some good aspects of Krav Maga. It's terrible for law enforcement, to be honest with you.
Horrible for law enforcement. Well, not all of it.
Well, what I mean by that is the things that you're teaching are the same things that when they get caught on videotape, you're getting prosecuted for.
Well, because they look, from what I understand, and I've never trained Krav Maga, but I do want to. But from what I hear, Krav Maga is not about, about submitting and, using their own body weight. This is about, I'm going to pull your eyeball out of your eye, and then I'm going to chew it and spit it back out at you.
Right. Its goal is something completely different than what we do in law enforcement. Correct. I think it was created by Israeli IDF, and it's for extreme circumstances. You're being swarmed by multiple enemies. And
you're going to create.
You're trying to kill and get out.
Yeah.
Debilitating strikes, stuff that I'm not saying they're not effective and useful, but
I know what you're saying.
Probably not the best sole thing to be teaching a police officer to deal with combative people.
Well, because and not that it would, like you said, not that it's not effective, but let's face it, we have to bear in mind the current state of law enforcement, right, in this country. And that is, we want you to do your job. We just don't want to see you do it.
Well, and what's our goal in law enforcement when we're dealing with somebody, right? Normally, majority of our situations that are combative are just someone fleeing or maybe fighting with the sub, right? It's not going to, the shooting situations are much more rare. So if we take out that, we take somebody that's normally trying to get away from us, right? So what's the best? We don't need to beat him on the back of the head, right? We need to physically control his body and get him under control and get him cuffed, which jiu-jitsu, grappling, which includes judo, wrestling, sambo, whatever. Those are just tailor-made for that kind of situation. They really are. And even with someone fighting and striking you, you need to understand a little bit about striking and defending. But again, grappling, getting in tight and grappling and controlling someone's body, still perfect for that kind of situation.
Well, because I mean, let's face it, that's where we usually end up.
I mean, in most fights
on
end
the
up
ground,
on the
especially if you're chasing somebody.
Right.
Well, you can't. It's hard to stand. It's hard to handcuff someone combative standing up.
It's tough.
It's
damn
tough
near
to
impossible. Handcuff anybody who doesn't want to go in cuffs. It's tough. People think they don't really realize it, and you're going to have those that, oh well, I would have done this or I would have done that, because they're looking at you like a big, like an officer your size trying to cuff, maybe a woman the size of your wife, and they're thinking, well, just slam her down and put the cuffs on. Yeah, right.
Please.
It's not that easy.
Well, that one that slammed down could put me in jail.
Correct. Then there's that.
So then you, how could you slam someone so small? I'm like, oh, fuck, please.
Yeah.
Right.
It drives me crazy.
Right.
So I'm going to switch back. Something I deal with and talk about a lot is PTSD and TBI. I deal with a lot. I mentor a lot of guys that have come out, mostly service related, not police officer. Jason and I talked a lot on a lot of the effects of potentially the effects of PTSD on current officers and it not being addressed and possibly leading to overreactions or a little bit of excessive force, not on a criminal standpoint, but just in the sense of maybe you need to apply 20 pounds of pressure, but you're going to apply 30 because you were just triggered.
Right.
Type situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about it. Listen, at the end of the day, this is something that's just, it's not being addressed.
Right.
And it needs to be, I actually put that on the back here.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
See,
It's time we talk about that, right? It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's time we talk about that. And I believe that the majority of blunders that you see, police blunders, or what the perception is of police, either an overreaction or an underreaction to sudden onset stress stuff, is exactly that. It's because we aren't trained in how to deal with that particular thing. So if you put on top of that issues with post-traumatic stress that are going unaddressed, well, then you're really setting up these officers, setting them up for failure. You're sending them to war with a butter knife.
Yeah,
pretty much.
You're doing.
I mean, that's really a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're going to put a stinger in them on top of it. And it's a situation that, we got all the stuff with the kneeling and the Kaepernick stuff and all of the social injustice and all of these things going on, and you guys being officers, and then me having lots of officer friends, and then going through the service and civilian situations around the globe. I feel safe to say that very few times does any officer or the arresting person or the person that's been delegated the authority to control the situation ever truly wants to harm anyone. I very rarely have seen it. Does it happen? Yes. Very rarely is that the case. And not that we don't need to say we need to look at things, and we are body cams and all that stuff. The PC stuff really frustrates the hell out of me. As you can see, I get kind of flustered with it trying to say it. People don't become officers, and people don't become teachers, and people don't serve the military to go out and hurt people.
Yeah, no,
it's just not the base foundation of it, right? So it's a situation that when these things come up, I'm going to use a little bit of your story, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So clearly you were shot in an altercation, and I watched some of the videos and what you could, because when it happened, body cams weren't in heavy use, so it was kind of off camera and things of that nature.
Right.
When stuff like that happens, I don't see it being addressed on either side when an officer is hurt really bad, be it a shooting, be it a broken bone, be it a beating, be it whatever it is. I'm just going to say hurt really bad. I don't see it.
Of course not, because we signed up for that. That's the mentality.
Right.
That's what they signed up for. Absolutely freaking not. That's not what I signed. I didn't get signed up. I didn't sign up for this job to take one to the face and the chest and have my family go through all the crap that they've been through. That's the part no one's looking at, is that aftermath of that. We don't just wake up one morning and scratch ourselves on the ass or wherever and go, I think I'm going to shoot me somebody today, because there's a lot that comes with that.
Yeah.
And people aren't talking about that.
And that's what I'm saying, is that even if there's excessive force, even if somebody's wrong and somebody's whatever the fuck, but that's a whole nother topic. I want to use some of your story as the example, because it's relevant and that fits.
Right.
It was and I you don't have to go from beginning to end of the story. We'll piece it all together. We usually have pretty smart people watching and listening, and even if they're not, they'll figure it out. And if they don't, they'll shoot me some hate mail, and we'll go from that way.
So the video you saw, just real quick.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the shoot on it.
You could
Which
hear
one are you
it.
talking about? The first shooting or the second shooting?
Oh, you know what? I don't know.
You're talking about the shooting on
where I got shot.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, yeah, because there was one the year prior, almost to the day.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there was the second one in which I actually took shots. I'm talking way over here. So yeah, there were actually two.
I think it was I'm going to say it was the second one.
It's going to be the second one.
Yeah, I think it was the second one from what I looked.
I should show that full video to you. I have the full video where you actually see it on camera.
Decent amount of audio, but really, that's really all you get.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a video, but
Yeah.
fuck, the video was nonsense.
Yeah, I think that's the one that was released that had the shoot edited out, but it's on there.
Yeah,
okay.
They did.
Okay, is that what that was?
Yeah.
So it was a traffic stop, right?
It was a traffic stop.
Traffic stop.
Three gang members, MS-13, in the car.
They have a heart, by the way. I didn't know.
Yeah, did you know? Just in case.
According
At least in California.
Nancy Pelosi said all MS-13 members have a heart. I don't mean
they all have a heart.
That's what Nancy Pelosi says.
So I
Nancy
guess
Pelosi needs to go on a ride along.
Yes, she does.
Come on, Nancy.
I mean, scientifically, they do have an actual beating heart.
It's beating. I mean, yeah.
Like, come on, man.
No, it was three guys in the car, and I didn't know that. She said that?
Yeah,
really?
she sure did.
Interesting. When did she say that?
She said that in response to when Trump
I'm
called
sorry,
them all, when Trump called them all animals and
she said they have a
whatever he
heart.
said, and then we need to get them all out of our country. And her response was, this was the Democratic kind of talking point, was, well, inside every human is a flicker of light, and there's a heart there beating, and it was this bullshit politics. But she got called out on it pretty quick, and like most of the Democrats that said that did.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was
I didn't mean to interrupt your story, but
no, I mean
it just reminded me of that.
I hadn't heard. I don't
it's
really.
so frustrating when you hear.
I try really hard. I have to make a conscientious effort to stay away from like a lot of media stuff because it literally puts me in a bad mood.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, it was a traffic stop. I'm gonna have to read about that. It was a traffic stop in October of 2013. Yeah. 3 guys in the car.
Years.
Yeah, almost 5 years. Still very real in my house though. Wow. Because it don't go nowhere.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
But everyone's like, "Hey, she should be over it by now. Get over it." So, 3 MS-13 gang members. 2 of them were here illegally in this country. One of them, the driver, had been deported twice before and re-entered the country. And the other one was here illegally. I don't really know any other history on that except for that he was not here legally. And the third guy, I didn't hear that he was here illegally or not, so I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, it was just one of those nights, where I picked that car because they had some stuff was going on that kind of caught my attention. I had my spidey senses going, and there was a couple of different things there for all you PC people out there that gave me probable cause to initiate the stop on the car. Yeah. But outside of that, what caught my attention was the fact that I have been doing this a long time. Yeah. And I saw things that were not necessarily things, but I saw things there from way far away. So before I could even know what race was in the car, you know what I mean? This is just little indicators.
Shadows, movements, things.
Yeah.
That are,
little indicators. You sit at a traffic light through a couple of ghost cycles with your left turn signal on, and you're not in the turn lane, and you're just sitting. There's a lot of things could be going on there, right? So I'm going to check it out. And so that's basically what happened. Yeah. That's what got us there that night to where it was that car and me, and we were on a stop. Yeah. There was a couple of different things there.
And can I
but it went south pretty quickly.
Officer question. Okay. Is it okay for an officer to stop a vehicle to be like, hey, something's weird, you guys good? You guys okay? So you're not stopping them necessarily to give them a citation or a warning or anything like that. Something peculiar comes up, and are you allowed to approach the car?
It really does depend on the situation in its totality. Herein lies the problem. Yeah. Is that in that moment it's you and maybe your partner, whoever else, and that other vehicle or person or whatever. Right. So you have to really be able to articulate that scenario in a way that the people who are sitting watching this later on, because you shot and killed this guy or girl, from behind their keyboard, because they all got their their Texas peace officer license through Facebook, right? Yeah. And you have to articulate it in a way that they can basically feel and see and totally get the gist of what was going on in that moment, and that's not easy to do. Right. I mean, Stephen King, I don't know, could articulate something like that. Very, probably he could, yeah. But anyway,
maybe we need to hire him.
But you know what I'm saying? Like you have to. So to answer your question, I guess the short answer is it really depends on the situation.
It's kind of what I teach young guys is, one, the longer, like she's talking about, the longer you've been doing it, things start to stand out. Yeah, vehicles stand out. Things that aren't violations of the law, but just through training and experience, and your brain perceives things that you don't necessarily perceive, but it's giving you those red flags. You perceive things, so when you start to perceive those things, that's when you start paying attention to a vehicle. And usually what I tell you guys is that's where you need to start. When you realize there's something not right, that's when you start observing and looking for probable cause for you to initiate the stop in order to. But it's about being able to articulate that you have a lawful reason to stop the vehicle. Right. Because without that lawful reason, you put yourself kind of in jeopardy legally. Right.
Of the entire thing. Yeah. I mean, had the car not done some of the things that the car had done, I would have stopped and at least checked, because you're talking about a car that sat idle at a red light for 2 go cycles, right?
Well, but then that's something. I mean, to me, I don't know by law, but that's probable cause. Like, you're not
absolutely.
You have the cause, correct? But I'm just saying. Let's just say I roll up on a car and it's parked at a park, and it's sitting there, and the guy's like slumped over. I don't know if he's asleep. I don't know if he's passed out because he's drunk. Yeah. I don't know if he's had a heart attack or he's in a diabetic coma. I don't know. Some might check. Yeah. Are you okay? So yeah, there's instances where we just check just to see if something's okay, because that's not, the nature of what we do is not just to hem people up and throw them in handcuffs.
And that's kind of the point I'm getting to. Is
yeah.
Having a badge doesn't disqualify you from being a human.
Correct.
And then, right? I mean, that's
Jinx,
kind of
pinch, Omicron.
right. There, I know. Jinx,
Yeah.
you know, but that's kind of the point. Is that I think that escapes a lot of people. Is that there's a lot of times I think officers are great people, and they're like, something's really not right. You don't know what's going on, and you're legit as a human being with a little bit of higher authority because you have a badge.
Mm-hmm.
You can be like, think, dude, everything good? Oh yeah, sorry, everything's great. You know, just at the park, chilling out, napping. I was driving, figured this was safer. Oh, okay, great, be safe, see you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's it.
There's a lot of technicalities in there.
Right, you know, yeah.
We absolutely have a right to talk to anybody we want to, just like you
Right.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's little things there that if we don't have certain things in place that we've met or requirements that we've met, then they don't necessarily have to talk to us. So without getting into the details of all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, we're allowed to talk to people and check and make sure they're okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was
No,
one
no,
of those
no.
just kind of like, I know people, this is something I see a lot. Like,
It-
I wasn't doing shit, and that officer came around. Well, maybe they were just concerned, man. Like, just relax. So that was the reason for that. So please continue, because you were ready to do the stop.
I initiated the stop. So after this car catches my attention, right, I actually chose to drive past the car. I drove past the car at the intersection of Murphy Road and West Airport.
Okay, yeah.
So that's kind of a high crime area for us when I was over at Stafford. We have a lot of problems there. You've got the Walmart, you know, everything bad happens.
Still is, but whatever. Yeah, like, whatever, yeah.
A lot of good sales at Walmart too.
But very true.
So there's the Walmart over here where we had actually during that time we were having a string of aggravated armed robberies and stuff.
Okay.
So then off to the right there was an area there that was a really high crime area for narcotics, prostitution, robberies, things like that. So all of this area here was just not a great area. But aside from that, I decided just to pass this car up and take a glance in the car just to kind of gauge what I was working with here. Is anyone asleep at the wheel at this point? What's happening? I'm going to pass it, take a glance in, and then I'm going to flip around and stop the car. Yeah. By the time I was turning around, now you have another car that's behind this one, and the light is cycled green, so this car has to kind of get out of this lane and go around it. So now we're impeding traffic here. Right. We're causing some other little problems. As I initiated the stop, a couple of things. You know, one of the first, our brain as law enforcement officers is a constant state of like prioritization and just kind of drawing and computing and processing. So it's, it's observing, and then you're processing and you're prioritizing, right? This is the whole time that we're working. This is what we're doing. And so that's kind of what I was doing. I was like, okay, I can't really see too well in the car because of the tint. I'll tell you what I could see, because I was trying to see movement. Couldn't see that too well. What I could see was these ridiculous red, and I think I told you about this, Jay, these 2 racing stripes down the back of this car. So this was an Altima, a Nissan Altima, right?
With racing stripes? With
red racing stripes. Looked like a 22s on a Pinto. I don't know. We know what Pintos are. Do these younger generations? I don't even know what that is, right?
They got Google,
Look
man.
like 22s on a Pinto, right? And what I recall is that those red races, to this day, I see racing stripes on a car, and it just, I don't like it. But I saw these racing stripes, and I remember thinking to myself how ridiculous they looked, and it almost pissed me off. Okay.
Yeah.
Hindsight, now I know my body is just picking up some feeling, and it's making me feel, basically your body's starting to tell you that just, it was nothing. They were just stripes, right? But your body's kind of picking up. Your instincts are telling you something's not right about this whole thing. Not necessarily that the racing stripes were there, but just that it was just something, right? I remember those racing stripes. I remember that the car kept moving slowly, which is always a big indicator to us in law enforcement. But a lot of times at night, people want to pull over to a well-lit area, So I want to give them the chance to do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
He passed this big old parking lot that was well-lit, and I was like, okay, this isn't good. But the minute I thought that it wasn't good, there was a trailer park there that he started to veer into. So I said, oh, okay. So once again, we go back to the prioritization, the red flag, white flag, red flag, white flag. You're going back and forth, because I've been doing it long enough to know I'm not going to hop out and pull my gun out or call that the guy's, he's not stopping. He's not. So you get those cops, right? Like 2935 traffic. 2935, go ahead. And you're like, traffic on a blah, 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 blah. And they're like, 10-4, I'm clear. He's not stopping. He's not stopping. You know, like, give him a second, right? Yes. So there's always that one cop
give him at least 20 feet to stop.
Yeah, like, give him a second. So I always try to do that. And when he passed that parking lot, I realized he's not looking for a well-lit area. So then just as I started to get, okay, red flag, he starts to pull over into this trailer park. So I go, okay. So this guy's either really drunk and he's trying to get home because, you know, if they make it home, they stagger out, you know, and they're in their own driveways. Like, but I live here.
But I was already here.
So they're safe, right? That's how it works. And I'm going, no, that's not how this works. And so then it's not that, you know, it could be that, not that. It could be he's having car trouble. He doesn't want to break down the street, so he's trying to make it home. It could be a couple things.
Yeah.
So at that point, I wasn't really super heightened or somebody get out here and back me up. I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
I think everybody's level of what's the word I'm looking for? You tolerate a little more. Your level of comfortable, your comfort level. You know, it's like, different for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I believe that you take an officer's never been. We've had a conversation about this.
Right.
Never been punched in their face once in their life, right?
Yeah.
Never been in a fist fight, never had any real solid life experience with conflicts or things of that nature, physical.
Yeah.
And then you take somebody like me who, you know, I'm me. You know, I've had this childhood, you know, this childhood that's prepared me for things in life. And then I had, you know, my military training and then my boxing career. So, you know, so my level of toleration or comfort level is probably different than that officer's. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to feel threatened maybe exactly when he or she does.
Right.
If that makes sense.
You have enough life experiences to know that it's very plausible for that situation right then to not be life-threatening.
Correct.
It could be, but
correct.
It also
there's times where I could have pulled my gun out and had it out, but I felt very comfortable that this is going to go hands-on, so I probably want my hands free for a second here. It's my first thought process isn't, you know, to do this or not to do that because I'm comfortable there and I'm trained there. So I wasn't at the point where at this point, because he passed the well-lit area and because I couldn't see too much movement, I wasn't there where I was saying I need backup now. But once we got this car stopped, at one point when he pulled into the lot, as I'm walking up to the car, that's when everything started to really start to boom. Boom, here's a red flag. Boom, I'm catching it all because that's the way our brains work. Cops, you know, they show up somewhere and it's, bam, that guy's got his hands in his pocket. Even though I'm dealing with this guy, but this guy's got his hands in his pocket over here. So there's like a million things you're responsible to pick up with one set of eyes. One set of eyes. You take your one set of eyes and tell me if you pick it all up, it's not going to happen, right?
It takes training, practice, experience.
Training, practice, and experience, and just what you can get with one set of eyes. You know what I'm saying? So I walk up to the car, and as I'm walking up to the car, the driver starts rubbernecking out. He's rubbernecking. That's never a good sign. You know, he's looking for me. At some point, I'm coming up on him, and he's looking down at my firearm. He's looking up at me. He looks down at my firearm. He looks up. So we're having this, you know, because I see him looking at me. So I disengage the first locking mechanism on my holster, which clicks.
Yeah,
it was very dramatic in the moment because it was so quiet and stifling. I felt like there was no air there.
Yeah,
it almost echoed, is what I remember it to be, right? And he kind of melts back into his driver's seat, and I remember thinking, okay, so what's happening here is we're having this nonverbal conversation.
You're getting paragraphs of information,
right? We're communicating because that's what we're doing. Humans, we do that all the time. We communicate with one another without saying a word.
Exactly.
People don't realize how much we do that, and I think if people got better trained in how to pick that stuff up, the things we could probably prevent, right? It's fascinating.
Countless. I mean, limitless. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Limitless.
So he knew that I knew that he was, you know, interested there in my firearm, and I get to the car, and one of the first things I realize is that there is a third passenger that I didn't see when I passed the car, and he's sitting behind the driver, windows partially down. He's pale, sweaty. Driver's pale, sweaty. I take position. So here's the driver's seat. That's the driver right there. That's the passenger window. I take position right here, right by the rear passenger window, and I felt really good there tactically.
Yeah.
I knew that if anything was going to happen, if they wanted to get to me, they were going to have to come out here and get to me, right?
Yeah.
And that was, I felt good there. But I was giving a lot
Yes.
up of what I could see on that side of the car. So on the side of the front passenger over there, I couldn't really see him very well. At one part on the full dash cam, you actually see me kind of pivot. I pivot away from that just to take a peek. I saw that he looked younger and he was really darker. He was a lot darker complected.
Yeah. Oh man.
We have some bullshit dialogue back and forth there, and at one point he's doing the 50 million pat down, looking for his driver's license that we all know he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there. It's kind of like when you see spiders on the wall and you feel them all behind you and everything. At one point, I even turned and checked my six because I was feeling something was not right
off,
here. Right. At one point, when I initially started to initiate the stop, my sergeant on duty that night asked me, did I need a check by or backup unit? And I said, no, I'll advise at that point. So by this time in the stop, I've asked for backup, so he's coming. And I think one of the last things that he said to me was, I don't have it. I don't have it. Because I was like, well, where's your ID? Or I don't remember really. But he said something like, I don't have my ID. And I said, well, what do you have? And by this time I'm annoyed because what he did was he actually leans just ever so slightly. He leans over to his right and he mumbles something to the passenger sitting next to him, and he mumbled it in Spanish. Yeah. So I'm Latina, right? I recognized it was Spanish, but I couldn't hear clearly what he was saying, and I'm not fluent. Right? I don't habla all the way.
Even if it was in English, you still may not have understood what he said.
Right, because it was under his breath. Right. But it's in Spanish, so that's an even bigger red flag, because clearly you're trying to speak it in another language that maybe you're hoping I don't understand or whatever the case may be. So this is not good. Not good. By this time, I can hear my heart beating in my ears, which I know you know how that feels. I know you know how that feels, Jay. You can hear your heart's beating, and I could feel the sweat beads. I was so heightened at this point. I could literally feel the sweat going down the back of my neck. Yeah. And I remember when he mumbled something to the driver, it kind of pissed me off because I thought, how dare you sit here and plot on me like I'm not standing. You think I'm stupid? This is what's going on in my head. So I lean forward just a bit more and I go, well, what do you have? Or something like that. And, they showed me. They showed me, right? Look at you. You don't even like when he gets so uncomfortable when I joke about it. He doesn't like it.
It's like, well, what bothers me, because I was working that night.
He was working that night.
And I was half a mile from you on another traffic stop. But I was for different departments at that point. And so our radios are not synced.
Don't do it.
So I don't know what's going on.
And, don't you do it. I already see. Take a drink of that water.
Anyway, it's difficult for me. I've still not watched the whole video. I feel like I wasn't.
We're very close.
Just keep talking.
Okay.
Well,
we're very close.
It's a situation, and.
But do you hear what he said?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I wasn't.
Yeah.
So, I know what he's gonna say because we've had these conversations. I feel like I wasn't there for you, and that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem. Because, we all know the story. I get shot. I got shot in the face. I got shot in the chest by the front seat passenger. Yeah. So these two guys that I felt super heightened about wasn't where the threat actually ultimately ended up coming from in that moment. Yeah. He whips around and comes in between, behind the driver and in front of the passenger and starts shooting. And I take that shot to my face and I remember it feeling what I would imagine it feels like to. Your baby wants to come.
No, she knows how to open the doors.
Oh, she's in here.
Yeah, so she's well, there's awesome. Thunder, so we lost
she's
on that
scared.
one.
Yeah. No, that's okay. You want me to close it?
No, it's fine. Okay. And I know how it feels to get shot.
Yeah, but I'm trying to tell you what in my mind's eye I was thinking. Like, I imagine it's what it felt like to get punched by Mike Tyson. Because I don't know about you, but I equate everything like to my boxing years. Because I was pretty good.
Well, I mean,
I was pretty good.
You're in a special place for boxing. So,
I was ranked #1 in the country for 2 years and number
Nice.
2 in the world.
Oh.
I was like, I got these hands, bruh. No.
And then that Marine Corps stumped you, but we'll get into that.
Did you ever take one in the grill?
Yes.
It's almost indescribable, right?
Yeah.
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 And
I have some nice little scars that go
I
through
saw
and-
that, you know.
Yeah,
Scars get like you can't even. Well, I'm wearing makeup. It's like Estee Lauder.
Maybe I need some Estee
Anything. It's good. But yeah, the first shot hits me in the face. My head flies back. And as you know, crazy stuff goes through your mind. You got that time distortion and all kinds of things. But one thing really that to this day really bothers me from that whole first shot was the ringing in this ear was so intense. Like it was like boom. So I didn't see him produce the weapon, but I actually looked at him at the moment he fired at me because the muzzle flash shot out at me. It was really close. And this ear just like
yeah, but that's probably from the percussion, not the impact, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, either way, but yeah.
It was that loud.
Yeah.
The gunshot, maybe. You know, I don't know. But it was so loud. It was almost debilitating. Then my eyes, as my head's flying back, my eyes locked to his eyes. Our eyes locked so deeply and intently that I actually saw his facial expression change from that moment that he shot me to the seconds right after he shot me as he's still coming. Yeah. And it looked one way and then it went to nothing. Yeah. And
that's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's eerie because the way he looked initially, what I recall is the eyes being, his head was kind of down and his eyes were kind of clenched, like any person looks when they're angry or doing something bad, right? But then when it went to nothing, it's like, that was creepy. I looked down, I saw the weapon. I mean, there was just a couple of things, but I think the calmness kind of came over me when I saw the weapon, because when I looked at it in my own brain, and you could probably relate to this because you're just as fucked up as I am in that, but at least I knew what I was being shot with. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. This is a 9mm that he's shooting me in the face with, so I'm good. In my brain, that's how my brain was working, and then I turned to do a tactical retreat. I get the fuck out of here, right? I turned to do a tactical retreat.
That's a nice way to say that. I was like, get the fuck out of this place.
I was doing a, I was doing a GTFO H, and I'm out. I'm turning, and then I take the second shot to the left side of my left breast. So I got shot in the grill and the titty, the two worst places you could ever shoot a woman ever. But they didn't care. No, they obviously didn't care because that's how it is now. It's not. They were not shooting me. They didn't have a problem with me and Carrizales. They had a problem with the person wearing that badge. You know what I'm saying? You know, you get it. So.
No, I know. And there's all kinds of things. And I've had officer friends that have been shot at by gang members and shot at. And I feel like most of the time the first shot, like so when the passenger shot the first time, it was probably meant to be a really scary warning shot and they wanted to get out. Maybe not.
No, I'm thinking no.
But then when there was an impact, it's like that's when the blank goes and like, oh fuck, now we're in this. Now it's got to go to a point as opposed to the run.
Right.
And I see
I can see what you're saying because
it could not be with this. I'm just saying I've
right.
heard those stories.
Well, see, but then hearing too, hindsight, it's something, right? It's something, and I actually sat down across from my shooter for 2 hours, had a conversation, my husband and I. Well, my husband didn't have a conversation.
Well, no, I wouldn't imagine so.
He didn't, but I did. It's crazy because of the 3 men in the car, I had the least amount of anger toward the one who shot me. I was very angry with the driver. I always felt wholeheartedly with all my gut, even before I knew what the other two had to say, that this was the ringleader. I felt that from him. I saw it in his eyes. He was the driver. He was plotting. I mean, there was just so many things about it. And then for him to go in court and say, I was a victim. I was just scared. I didn't know anything was going to happen. So, yeah, it was the one who shot me was, he was the youngest one in the car. Okay. At 20 years old when it happened, but he was always straight. Like, yeah, I shot her. Yeah. And we locked eyes. Yeah. There's a scene in the movie An Unfinished Life. That movie has got J-Lo,
I mean, know the movie. I've never seen it. but I know what
Morgan
you're talking
Freeman
about. Yeah.
is in the movie, and I forget what that actor's name is. Anyway, he plays her father-in-law. Her husband was killed some way, somehow, and so her and her daughter go to live with him on this ranch. And Morgan Freeman's character is kind of going off topic, but I just find this fascinating. Morgan Freeman's character was kind of maimed or hurt or injured because he was attacked, mauled by a bear.
Yeah.
Okay, so he would go out and he would sit. They found the bear and they put it in a cage. And Morgan Freeman didn't want the other guy, the Robert Redford.
Yeah.
He didn't want Robert Redford's character to kill this bear yet. But he would go out and sit in a chair and just stare at this bear for hours and hours. And I remember one scene, this is years ago. This is way before this shooting happened, right? The one scene where J-Lo or whoever else, I think it was J-Lo, asks why he does this. And he starts to explain that this bear and him spilled blood together, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't fault the bear because the bear is just doing what a bear does, you know?
Yeah.
He crept up on the bear and startled the bear, and he got mauled for it. But the bear drew his blood, and the bear tasted his blood, and he drew that bear's blood, and blah, blah, blah. And so they exchanged blood, and so they were connected. Their souls were connected. I always found that to be super deep, but I'm a deep thinker that way by nature. But I found that to be super deep.
Yeah. I get that. Absolutely, I get that.
And so I kind of felt like that was the attitude. Now, I'm not saying I didn't go through my spells of being very angry, and, you know, I went through dark periods there. But I was at a point where I just had to sit with him. I had to talk to him. I had to look into his eyes again. And my husband and I used to have conversations because I'd say, I have to see them. I have to see them. I have to talk to them. First it was them, but then it was just him. I didn't give a shit about the other two after a while. It was clear that they weren't ever going to own their culpability in it. You know, he did. And so I always said, you know, I have to. And he would say, why? You don't have to. Why? You know, you don't get it. Like, I do have to. And he just finally said, okay, I yield back. Like, this is something I'm not going to understand, but you need it. So I'm going to go with you. Yeah. And I had to compromise because I wanted to do it by myself, but I had to compromise, right? And he came with me, and I sat and I talked to him. I just felt so like, you have to understand, I saw those eyes for years and years. I would see those eyes in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in anywhere, in my house, in my bed.
Yeah.
You know, people don't understand that kind of stuff. And so I needed to sit across from those eyes again. And I can only think of that one scene in that movie to describe. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say maybe our souls are connected. I don't know if I felt that way, but I know that I felt there was that connection there. Yeah. Because you tried to kill me and I tried to kill you back, and we're both here, and you're ready to own up to what you did, and so I want to sit there.
It's a unique situation.
It is. It is very unique, and a lot of my brothers and sisters in law enforcement don't ever have that opportunity. Yeah. And many of them in my travels, I have heard this. I wish I could have sat across from him or her and asked these things. So what I did was I did that. I asked questions that had nothing to do with my situation necessarily, but just questions that I know people wanted to have maybe been able to ask their attackers, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't have answers for them, but I also wanted to let him know how he's hurt people that weren't even there. Jason wasn't there. This hurts Jason to this day. People that are close to me, my partners on the streets. I have a really good friend, Brandon. Brandon was on duty with me that night. Good friend of mine, good friends with him and his wife. You know, he's been to my child's birthday parties, and I've been to his daughter's birthdays, and this guy cannot, just like Jason, he cannot go there and not get emotional. So, and that's the thing that I think people don't understand. So,
well, and that's and that is so important to deal with and manage from a psychological standpoint. Mm-hmm. Call it PTSD, call it TBI, call it whatever the hell you want to call it. It's like, at that point, I don't care, but it's. I think it's got to be addressed, because if you continue to serve or not, you experiencing that, causes trauma. So does it with Jason.
Right.
So does it with your partner.
Right.
So does it potentially with your sergeant and your husband and your kids. And I lean towards, and I'm pretty educated in psychology and things. I lean towards PTSD is not just for the person who experienced the trauma.
Nope.
That your children and family and friends can experience PTSD to that situation, not at the same level.
Right.
But because you went through it, they've got to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not only are we not addressing in this situation what you went through
Mm-hmm.
properly, but we're not addressing properly what Jason and your partner and your husband and your kids went through.
Right.
And holy shit, why not?
Right.
Like, I'm just kind of like, why are we having GoFundMe pages for these jackasses to do stupid shit to police officers, but we can't get something going on for the officers themselves or a military member or their fan? You know what I mean? I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean,
so you see on my card, I put the fight after the fight. I won the fight. Now what? It's time we talk about that, because that's actually what I do when I'm traveling and speaking, right? And I'm talking about the effects on family, and it's not. I took the bullets, but everybody else goes. Everybody else close to me is going to have some kind of residual effect from this, right? My daughter trains jiu-jitsu in Richmond, and when she was training, her coach Daniel was doing this scenario with her in which he was training them for the women empowered training that the Gracies put on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he had a fake gun, and one of the moves that he was teaching her to defend against was being attacked by an armed suspect. My daughter was not shot, okay? But when she was in elementary school, she had to go through her mom being in 2 shootings. So when she laid on the ground with her partner and they put that gun to her, I watched it happen. I watched her face change. I watched her body language change. You're talking about a little girl who is strong and poised and just amazing and resilient. And in that moment, it just something happened to her. And I watched her, and I'm watching, and I'm looking at her while she's on the mats. And she froze, like she just, and then all of a sudden she looked at me, and I said, "Do you need to stop, or are you okay?" or something like that. And she just lost her stuff, and I took her into the restroom, and she was trembling and crying, and she's like, "I don't know, this is so stupid. I don't know why this is happening. Like, I know it's a fake gun, right?" I said, "This is okay. Like, this is okay. Like."
Right, but fake gun or not, it's irrelevant. That situation triggered her, and with children,
right,
especially with children,
right,
she instantly went back to the one of the 2 times or both the times that she was shot, or that you were shot.
Right.
And her age was there. Her psychology went back to that. Her mentality went back to that. She was helpless. She was not helpless in the situation of the self-defense. She was helpless as a 6-year-old. I don't remember how old she was.
So she was, once again, I don't know. So the first shooting, so she's now 14. She was born in 2003, and the first shooting was in 2012. So
9.
She was 8 because she hadn't turned 9 yet, because she's a December baby.
Right.
So then the second shooting was in 2013, a year later.
Yeah. So
same
was
month.
8 and 9.
Yeah.
Basically.
So she was 8 and 9.
So she immediately is going to go back to that.
Yeah.
And I don't care when she's 30 years old.
It'll
if this
still be
isn't
there.
dealt with.
It'll still be
if
there.
She's triggered. She's going to go back to an 8 or 9-year-old girl.
Right.
And it's irrelevant to the situation or how she thinks it, because logically, I mean, and this is going, my own snapshot of a story. If something triggers me, I go back to
the moment,
the closest event that relates to that trigger.
Right.
Psychologically, mentally, I don't have a wife. I don't have the kids. I've got me. I've got my team, and I've got to deal with this shit.
Right.
And it's
it's difficult because during that time, I told you I kind of equate everything to boxing. So I always call, when I'm presenting and I'm out there speaking, I always refer to that first shooting as my round 1, my second shooting round 2, and then I talk about round 3, and everything is fighting, because that's in essence what we're doing every day as human beings, just to get to the next day, the next month, the next year, right? It's a fight. Everybody's been through trauma. Like my story, it's not just a cop story. Like, this is a human being story. We have all been through something very traumatic that has left us feeling like, how the hell are we going to come back from this, right?
Exactly.
And we've all had some type of trauma in our lives. And so this applies to that, because we're trying to just make it through. And so as law enforcement officers going through something like that, having gone through critical incidents, we are not really taught about a round 3. A lot of us don't even know that there's a round 3.
Exactly.
So you're taught, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, so you don't get shot, right? So the military specifically, I'm speaking about the Marine Corps because I'm a Marine, right? They did that. They taught me that too. But then they tell you, well, now this is a step further. This is what you do when you get shot.
Yeah.
And I thank God for that. I really attribute the way that I handled that situation to two things that were prominent in my life, and that's boxing and the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Marine Corps training, boxing training, and some people don't get it until they hear me speak, and then they realize when I dissect everything, like, oh my God, I get it, right? But I say, you know, they don't teach you about it round 3. So we not only as law enforcement officers don't even have the training or wherewithal to know what we're supposed to, that there's going to be a round 3, but we're taught do this and do that so you win the fight. We all go home. That's our thing. We all go home. Okay, I'm home, so this is me in round 3, right? I'm home.
So you're supposed
now
to be
what?
fine because you're home. Right.
Yeah, like now what? Now what I realized is that was the easy part.
Yeah.
Taking the bullets.
Yeah.
That was the easy
No,
part.
really, yeah.
And that was not easy. I mean, surgeries and like I lost half
easy
my
part in quotations.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Right.
That was the easiest part of the whole thing. Like I lost half my left breast. I had to have a partial mastectomy. I had to do 10 months. I walked around deformed like that. I had to get reconstruction done. I had surgeries on my face. I lost half my earlobe on this side, so they went over and did it on this side. So I got, you know, kind of like a little earlobe tuck there.
Right.
But you know, you go through the surgeries, but you're not going through that by yourself. Your family is going through that, and there's nothing in place really for us until as of recent that they're trying to do better by officers who have been involved, right? And there's documentaries being made. Have you never seen the documentary Officer Involved? Have you ever seen that?
I have it saved on my deal, but I have not watched it.
You've got to watch it. Officer Involved. That's a documentary. You've seen it, Jay?
Yeah.
Patrick, his name is Patrick Shaver, and he made that documentary, and it's just a really amazing
you the one that told me about
and
it?
raw.
Maybe. I think I've thrown about 50,000 Netflix documentaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a very raw and honest look into the aftermath, right? And so then now we're starting to make some moves where we're trying to help officers get by or learn about post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder, which one is not the other. Right? One, post-traumatic stress issues doesn't mean you have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
And even if you do have PTSD, it's not like a death sentence. And it's not a mental illness.
Right.
Sorry, I'm getting passionate about this.
That's
Because that's the things that they're scared of. Like, oh, I don't want to be labeled with a mental illness. I'm like, look,
it's not
a mental illness.
It's not.
It's like a completely normal reaction. It's a brain injury. You know, it's a traumatic brain injury.
Simple as this. This is, and I use this a lot. If I have a Bunsen burner right here and I touch it and it burns me, and I touch it again and it burns me, I actually have some level of PTSD per definition to the Bunsen burner, because I've touched it twice and I've received a burn and received a scar, and there is now a neurological connection.
Yeah, in your amygdala.
Right.
In our cellular core of our brain. So I'm super proud of myself.
Look at
No, let me tell you.
fancy.
No, because I thought,
I
like
thought you were
many
gonna break out
officers
with a
out
little,
there.
why is the crocodile so angry?
She's about to go all Dr. fucking Phil on me, right? Let me tell you, move over, Dr. Phil. I got this shit. No, because when this was going on, I thought I was losing my mind.
It feels like it.
Okay?
Yeah, it feels like
I thought
it.
I was losing my mind. And my family, and my point with this whole talking about this when I'm getting back to my daughter, was that I didn't even know what was going on with me, much less could I help them deal with their shit that they were, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we're just barely getting to this point where we're trying to do stuff for officers involved in critical incidents and the post-traumatic stress that goes on with not just officers involved in critical incidents, but you're talking about cumulative post-traumatic stress. You can tell I've done my research on this.
No, I know, yeah.
Because I had to, because I thought I was going crazy. And I thought, I'm not going to make it through this.
Yeah.
Like this part is going to kill me. I'm going to quit. I remember saying the words, I quit. And my husband cried. He says, you're scaring me. What are you saying? Are you saying you want to kill yourself? And I can honestly say that in that moment, I wasn't thinking of like offing myself. I didn't want to anymore. I didn't want to be the strong one. I didn't want to be an adult. I didn't want to do the cop stuff and take care of everybody else's problems, because I was in the middle of a fight and I wasn't winning. I was having a fight with an opponent that I was not made aware I was going to fight.
Right.
That's an ugly feeling, right? So I had to do the research. Once I started to learn and do the research and learn, oh, so this shit's back here in this part of my brain here. And what happens is it gets swollen. And every now and then it swells just a bit and it secretes all of these thingies, all of this, you know, hormones and chemicals and whatever.
Thingies is the technical term, because you're wondering, Jay.
Yeah, thingies.
Okay, no.
Okay.
So that's what happens. Like, I can't control that shit. And, you know, cops were control freaks. Military people tend to be control freaks, right? So I'm like, I can't control that. Like, that just does it on its own. I'm not crazy. It just, and it happens at the most inconvenient of times sometimes, right? But it happens. So I found that just like boxing, you know, it's like sometimes you get in the ring. I remember signing a contract when I turned pro to fight this girl for my pro debut. And her name was Carol Worth. I'll never forget her name. Carol Worthless.
Yeah.
Worth.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was like, where's the less? Where's the less? Come on now.
She was a nice girl, honestly. But, you know, but I still beat her up. Anyway, so it was Carol Worth. And I went in training for an Orthodox fighter. And when she signed her contract, she signed it with her left hand. And I remember seeing, she signed with her left hand. I signed with, I'm left-handed, but I don't box left-handed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is normal.
So I thought, okay, maybe she's left-handed, maybe she's not. But I didn't train for somebody who could be left-handed. Right. And I remember being concerned about that, right? So that's how I felt. Like, I did not know that there was this round 3. Yeah. And then I was pissed because my family was struggling, I was struggling, and then everybody else has to go back to regular life.
Yeah.
So your big thin blue line family has thin blue line jobs to do, and they all go back to their normal lives, and then you're sitting there left with the pieces to put back together. And I'm supposed to, you know, I'm supposed to be able to take care of everything, and I don't know how. Yeah. So it was an ugly feeling. So I found that once I started to do the work and educate myself and you know, see my psychiatrist and my therapist that I was seeing at the time to learn. It was like I was sitting there, and yes, I was talking about things that bothered me, but I wanted to learn about why this was happening. And then how I could combat it. So if you're gonna if this opponent post-traumatic stress was gonna hit me with the 1-2, well, I'm gonna come back with this, you know, this punch combination. Yes. And that's what I did. Yeah. And when I started to do that, I was the fear of what was happening to me started to diminish. My whole mindset changed, and there started the healing process, which in itself is a motherfucker, right? We're gonna toast to that. Let's toast to the healing. Let's toast to the healing, right?
I'm gonna have my first alcohol and
let me ask you a question. So this is something that one of the many things in policing nowadays that I think we're extremely deficient in, and there's a lot. Mm-hmm. But one for sure is taking care of officers who've been involved in traumatic events, shootings. There's a lot of different types of traumatic events you can be involved in. Right. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. I still don't see departments taking active steps. Well, we'll go further. We'll go to academy training. You're not. There's so little training involved. 1, in use of deadly force. 2, in what happens after you use deadly force. It's kind of like, if you use deadly force, well, that sucks, and you're gonna get some weeks off of work, and then you're expected to just come back and pick up where you left off. Right. And that's kind of the extent of what maybe some departments, I'm sure there are doing more than that. But on the average, I think departments are basically not even touching it.
I'm gonna throw a quick 2 cents in there, and then I want you to answer it, Jason. So in this is a kind of a question observation in what you're saying, because it's true. And then I'll say, going through what I did through the service, I was told and trained and shown as graphic and vile information as possible to prep me for what was going to happen. Right. Once it happened, that training wasn't for shit. Like, to me, this is through my own experiences, I don't know, because I agree with you, it's not being addressed. I don't know how you address it. There is nothing that I had gone through taking somebody's life or war or combat that could have prepped me for the post. You couldn't. And in the defense of them, all the training I went through, there's nothing else they could have done.
But that's what I'm saying is
so how do we do that?
There's no acknowledgement.
Well, and I don't think that's
PTSD. You're going to experience PTSD or PTSS. You're going to experience something after the fact. Your mind and your body's going to go through something for a long period of time after this. Not necessarily everybody's experience in response is different. Right. Yeah. But some level of knowledge given to officers and given to maybe even cadets of what happens afterwards. I just think we're afraid. It feels like we're afraid, or administrators, or maybe us in general, are afraid to talk about it.
I talking about what you just said. Yeah. There is nothing that they're going to be able. There's no way we could train you for that. We could prepare you by showing you pictures all you want to. It's just like when you were telling me that about the pictures and whatnot, the most vile, graphic pictures. Well, I was raising my son single till he was like 6 or 7, right? And then I met my husband, and I'm always that, when it's time to teach you about things like sexually transmitted diseases, I'm going to teach you, because I'm going to sit you down on this Google, and you're going to Google herpes, and you're going to hit images. Hit that button right there. Images. Spell this H-E-R, right? Yeah. He's in there. He's typing it. Now hit images. Now he's looking. Holy crap, right? He's like, and I'm like, yeah, that'll learn you, right? Yeah. But it doesn't matter. You could show pictures all day, but until the time you pop up with a canker where it ain't supposed to be, right? That you're going, oh my God, you don't know what to do, right? Yeah. It sounds like it's a funny example, but it's true. There's pictures is not gonna do it. There's just no way, and I don't think that's what we, as a culture in military or law enforcement, are asking. Right. How can you prepare me for what that's like to be shot? There's no way, right? But I agree with you, because I'm in the unique position where I travel all over this country and speak, and I teach for Caliber Press. So I meet officers from all over the place, and I hear stories that I'm shocked. I'm really shocked to hear, like, I was in a shooting on a Thursday, and I had Friday, Saturday off, and I had to be back to work on Sunday, and nobody talked about it. Yeah. And I was having a problem. I was having some issues, like you probably, and I'm thinking, you probably didn't even get any sleep till it was time to go back to work, at that point, because, you're on that autopilot, right? Yeah. So I've heard some horrible stories, and then I've heard some really good ones about what agencies are doing, but that is so far and few in between. Are they scared to talk about it? Yes. Yes, there is a stigma in police culture. We are afraid to touch that coal. You know what I'm saying?
More of an internal affairs question with that. As a blanket statement, precincts, because everyone is a little different, laws are different state to state. So just as a blanket statement, are the front offices or whatever of precincts or agencies afraid to admit a current acting officer has PTSD for liability reasons?
Ooh,
that's interesting. I'm not even going to try to dip my toe into that water, because that's well above my pay grade. Right. I know what the perception is. Right. The perception is, that we may be perceived as liability if we say, hey, I'm having some problems here. I'm having nightmares. I'm having anxiety or whatever. You hear officers that reach out for help, and they're relieved of duty, no questions asked. Yeah. Okay. To give me your gun, give me your badge, and that's how they earn a living for their families. Yes. So what they're doing is they're keeping their fucking mouth shut, and they're reaching for the bottle, and they're self-medicating with pills or booze or sex even, because let's face it, how many times you read a headline or officers doing some reckless stuff sexually on duty or whatever. These are all, because I did my work and I learned about some of the ways. They're all signs. There was
an officer that was involved. Speaking of that, there was an officer that was involved in responding to a school shooting, and I can't remember where it was. No, I take it back. It was to the Orlando shooting. He was one of the officers that responded to the shooting in the club where there was like 50. Yeah, okay. It was really bad one, and he could not recover. Like it was so much.
I know who you're talking about.
And he ended up losing his job.
Yes, he did.
Because the department would not support. They expected him to get back to work. Now they said, "Hey, we gave you 5 years. You should be ready."
I know who you're talking about.
I think it was like 5 years or 4 years.
I don't remember.
He could not, and they did not have. They were like, "We're done with you."
Oh man!
Like, this guy. If you don't heal or get over it fast enough, you can lose your job. Because I'll tell you, when I worked at Stafford Police Department, my chief wasn't having it. Yeah. So my chief at the time said to me, because that was one of the first things I was worried about. It's like, physically I was having some issues, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I didn't even know I was going to have issues with round 3 until about 5 or 6 months later.
Oh, wow. So you had a pretty big delay.
Yeah, that's called delayed onset post-traumatic stress. And that is very common, okay? And you remember I mentioned before how this is not specific to officers who've been involved in shootings or stabbings. You've got officers that have spent a long career in law enforcement and seen a lot of different stuff. They may never have gotten a shooting or been stabbed, but they've seen a lot of shit. Detectives that have had to go out on the scene of a crackhead who, a meth head or something that was cooking and her house burnt and the babies were on fire and he has to go in this house and these babies are charred and you know, how do you live with that, right? So there's lots of things cumulative that can affect them, and I think that can be dangerous, even more dangerous for those officers, because they don't have anything to really put their finger on to say, well, this is why.
Well, it's not an event.
And you know, the state, you better have a reason, right? The state wants to know, is this effect, is it what happened on the job that is causing these issues, right? So then there's that issue. But the thing is that you don't want to say anything because you don't want to be considered a liability. You ask the question about liability. It's the perception of the officers, yes, that you will be considered a liability and get yanked. Number 2, that you're not going to heal fast enough. And I remember going to my chief and saying, you know, I got to have surgery on this. And then when I had the surgery, now I have to have surgery on this. Because actually when they went in there to do the partial mastectomy, I had developed such a nasty, massive infection inside the breast from pieces of Kevlar that were left in there. Yeah. Because yes, I had a vest on, but that bullet entered my chest. Yeah. And almost penetrated my entire chest cavity before it popped back out and was held on, the vest held onto it, right? So I had pieces of Kevlar that went undetected and got infected, right? I remember my surgeon, like, the doctor was like, you know, you didn't know you had like, you don't have any pain? By this time, I'm already back to work. And I was like, well, yeah, I had pain. You know, I figured I've been shot in the chest, you know. I'm wearing my vest again. I expected to have some level of pain, right? And then he was like, well, you didn't get like fevers and like hot and fever. I'm like, I'm 40-something years old. Of course I get hot flashes all day, right? Of course. Like, so it was like no big deal when I went back to work. These guys, I was around them. They would say, how you feeling? I was like, I'm good. I wasn't having those issues until later. But the thing is that I went to the chief and said, you know, I'm scared that what if I don't heal quick enough, or what if, you know, and then when I did start to have the emotional issues with the post-traumatic stress, when I did enter into round 3, I was getting my ass beat. It was giving me a what for, and I had no answer because I'm like, wait a minute, what? I'm in another fight? I made it home. I made it home. That's what I was supposed to do, make it home, right? And I'm fighting again. So the chief was like, listen, I didn't have that problem. The chief was like, you take your time getting better. You take all the time you need. You always have a job. You're not going to get fired here. That was, I was fortunate in that I had that type of support in terms of the chief wasn't going to, at least that was what his words were to me. You're not going to be fired over this. But that's a very real fear. I mean, I know somebody personally who was T-boned by a car on her way to a burglary call. And she had massive injuries to her hips and surgeries and this and that and the third. And she was fired.
Yeah. And it's like, what do you
do?
You're kind of like, oh, you signed up.
Yeah.
You know, that whole signed up, it drives me crazy to hear that sometimes. You signed up to serve, and you go and you serve, and something like this happens, and you're left high and dry.
No, I signed up to serve you.
Right.
I signed up to pull you out of your house if it's on fire, maybe. If I can get to you, or
worse,
or to protect your life, or to report if you know you've had your house burglar. I signed up to serve you and protect you. It says to protect and serve. It doesn't say I take the oath to be shot up and murdered by these violent offenders. You know, so who don't even have any business in this country.
And when these people are fired, they're not getting any quality level of disability or insurances or things like that.
Yeah.
And then they're harmed, so it's not like they're a perfectly functioning adult.
Right.
So then they've got to come overcome those obstacles. Still have to provide for families. Still have to do these things.
Right.
Where are the people?
Right. And you know, the issue with these guys that I had was not that because you know you have people here that are not supposed to be here in this country that are hardworking people.
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
here and they're working and they're just trying to do better, right? But then you have all of these other people that aren't supposed to be here in this country that are committing violent crimes like this, right? And I was angry about that. I was angry about that at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, why do they even get protection? Why do they even have rights? Right? You know, I was because I was in my angry place at the time, right?
Yeah.
I feel like during that time, and then Ferguson happened.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking.
And then Ferguson happened. And when Ferguson happened, I saw the shift, and I started to get really depressed about what was going on, because I was received with love and praise and attaboys from people who loved me, even the ones who were being hateful, because you know you're always going to have those people behind your back that are hateful. But there was nothing that anybody really could say about what I did that was like, oh, she, you know, fucked up big time or whatever.
Right.
No, it wasn't like that. But then the Darren Wilson incident happened in Ferguson with his incident, and I say his name because that other piece of shit doesn't even deserve to be said on this show, right? So on this podcast. So Darren Wilson, bless his heart, was just out there doing his job. You think he woke up that morning and said, "I'm gonna scratch himself on his balls or whatever you guys scratch when you wake up, right?" Everybody scratches something, and said, "You know, I think I'm gonna shoot me, you know, a big old giant black kid today."
No, it's not.
No, that's not what he was thinking. No.
Which we know so much of the truth about that now, that all of that pre-crap and the no hands up, or hands up, don't shoot bullshit. We know it's all bullshit now.
My point is that the aftermath of that is what people are not thinking about. When you think of Darren Wilson, you know, the average Joe may think of the guy that he shot or the incident, or that some people may think he shot someone with their hands up, and you know what I'm saying? There's going to be all these other things. What I think of when I think of Darren Wilson is, my God, where is he now? I know what I said to you, we're almost 5 years out, but it's still very real in my house. Yeah. I think of Darren Wilson and where he is. He's still in hiding.
Yeah.
You know, how his family is doing, kids. I don't know, you know, like how I think of that. What does he dream about at night? What does he see in his sleep? Does he sleep? You know, that's exactly the stuff I think about. You know,
I'm curious, and there's some articles and there's some speculation on this of what did he actually have to go through after that, with the threats and with the hiding and with all these things.
It was horrible for him. I've never spoken to Darren Wilson. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of officers around the country that have been involved in some crazy incidents, high profile stuff, but I have never spoken to him. And Darren Wilson is in my prayers. Like I can't. I know that young man. I know the demons he sees.
Right.
And I pray that he has a good support system. I pray that he knows that he truly has more than not people who love and support him and care about him.
Yeah.
I do. I know that he's probably in a place where he's not really feeling like that, but I hope that he's okay, and I pray for him and his family.
And that's, you know, because we had talked about it
not that long ago.
A couple of shows ago, or a couple of casts ago. And that was one of the things I thought of when we were talking about him. I was like, what's happened to this poor dude now? And I don't know where he is. And I mean, I haven't Googled it. I'm sure it's available, and everybody's, you know, I mean, you can find anything anyway. But it was one of those situations I'm just like, what happened to him? And it literally was like, I was like, what happened? Like, I wonder what he's up to. Like, how's he taking care of himself? Taking care of him, providing for himself. How's he doing these things? You can't go get a regular job.
Right.
He can't be an officer anymore.
You could, but you know, it's not gonna. Yeah, is that safe for you, your family? But there's people out there want to kill that guy and his family. It's disgusting, you know. But the reason one of the things that I brought Darren Wilson's incident up was because when I started to see that shift, that's when we started to see what we often refer to now as the Ferguson Effect, right? You know, some people think that's not a thing.
Absolutely, it's a thing.
Not. There's no such thing.
Shoot.
Just like
you know, work the street. And
yeah. So, but it's a thing, and I think that I lost it. I just had a brain fart right then, just brain fart. It's gone.
I do that all the time.
No, I would do it
all the time.
What was I going to say?
You're talking about the Ferguson Effect.
Oh, yes. I started to get really angry and feel very alienated at that point, and I started to see, you know, really think about it. And I started to see the need that, you know, because I was getting all of these awards, you know, some of which you were there for. I was getting awards and medals, and every award I got, I felt worse and worse and worse, and my shoulders felt heavier and heavier, and I would cry. And I wasn't crying because necessarily like the beauty queen who wins the crown and she boo-hoo. No, it was like I was seriously crying for all the other officers out there that I knew were going through all these horrible things, and they weren't being recognized as brave. Right. They weren't being recognized as, stellar performances, and they didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Time.
Yeah, it's just a different time. So I often wonder, like, you take my incident and you do it post-Ferguson, and I wonder how that would be. Because at the end of the day, I'm just the chick that pulled over the car, that shot me, that I shot back, that they left, and I ran and chased them.
Well,
right?
I mean, the reality
I'm just that
is,
chick.
If you went through that today, you'd be in a really bad situation.
Yes.
Because it would be so scrutinized and it would be so picked
I don't
apart.
doubt it. Well, I don't doubt it.
Immediately, the Ferguson effect, for sure. Immediately, what you see now is the officer is immediately looked at almost as the suspect in the situation. They have done something wrong. They shot somebody. They did something wrong. When in fact, shooting somebody sometimes is doing something right. Is doing our job correctly.
Right. And goes back to the whole, we want you to do your job. We just don't want to see you do
it.
We
don't want to see all that. We don't want to see the ugly aftermath of it. But now it's immediately anybody. And there's been documented cases, and we've seen some on video, officers not shooting when they should be shooting, and they've either been hurt or just by the grace of God, Allah, Buddha, whoever, name them, has come out of the situation okay physically. No, it's an absolute effect, and it's
you have officers out there that are risking their lives, that are second guessing, that are underreacting because they don't want to be tomorrow's headline. They don't want to be smeared. Do you remember that female officer? This was in Chicago, and this guy high on PCP, I think, big giant suspect, big guy. He had her by the hair, and he was shoving her head.
I watched that video just the other day.
Do you remember? She's hollering and screaming, and nobody, there wasn't enough pull in the world to get this man to let this woman, he was bashing her head. Yeah. Later, because we use this as an example in one of our classes through Caliber, but it's a very disturbing when she was asked why she didn't, by her chief, why she didn't shoot, or, she said, I knew I could have shot him, but I didn't want my family to be put through all that, scrutiny the next day through the public. Right. We are at a place in this country, unfortunately, where we are now victimizing our criminals and we are villainizing our peacemakers, and that is just 100%. Bass backwards.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things.
We just said that yesterday.
Yeah, we were actually discussing that with the benevolent savage.
So they're risking their lives on the altar of. I have a good friend who says it. He says it best. I just, Chuck Porter is his name. I think you know who Chuck Porter is. I'm not sure, but he says. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know. I can't remember. It's escaping me. But he says, basically on the altar of public opinion, that they are, risking their own lives and their own safety because they don't want to get in trouble. Right. They don't want to be indicted. Now that's not to say that there's not a very small group out there who dishonor this badge, dishonor this uniform. Of course. Is there racist officers out there? Unfortunately, as like any other job, there are people out there that don't deserve to be wearing this uniform and this badge, and it makes it harder for the rest. But that's like the 1%, as opposed to,
And that's one of those things is that, and we talk about this a lot, is that you cannot start classifying every police officer as being X based on one or two random stories that sometimes didn't even pan out to be what they thought they were. You can't do it. And
just like we can't do that to the public either.
Exactly.
Every black guy is not a thug.
Exactly.
Every white guy, that's poor is not a crackhead, or you know what I'm saying? Right. Every Mexican is not here illegally, Right. We can't be doing that to each other. It's almost like this comic comes to my mind right now, and it's like, you're standing there and I'm standing here. I saw this comic and I thought, man, I want to put that on a shirt. And then there's one guy here and one guy here, and in the middle is the number, and you have the comic says this guy's over here going 9 and this guy over here is going 6. Yeah. And it's like, just because you're right doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong, and right, I think that's where we're at, and I think that there's just a lot to be said for trying to understand one another and their positions, and there just needs to be more talking done.
Well, it gets this, so I'm gonna bring a little bit of some of the controversy nonsense into this. So it's one of the things that I think needs to happen, and I don't know how, is that people just need to start acting right. There needs to be accountability for actions and things that
We need to start parenting our children.
Well, and that's really where it all starts.
Yeah.
And part of that is so with talk about the civilian population and dealing with police officers. It's a nice way to say these things. I'm like, oh, it's hard. I bite my own tongue. I'll bleed in my own blood because I'm chewing on my tongue. But the thing is this, is that on a traffic stop or this or that, it's like if an officer tells you to get on the ground, get the fuck on the ground. Like, what bad's going to happen at that point? Because if that officer is racist, a bigot, a this, a that, you're fucked anyway, right? Really? Like, you're screwed. I mean, I'm just saying, right? If somebody's
that
yelling
officer, or if that cook that's back there cooking your eggs and bacon at the Denny's,
you know what I'm saying? So I mean, you're screwed, right?
Yeah,
so the point of it is that I don't care what race you are or what class you are or this minority or if you got this on you or if you don't want to go to jail. If an officer is screaming at you to get on the ground, just get on the fucking ground. Like, why is that such a problem? Why did? Cause to me, and this is why I'm not a police officer. Get on if I've got my firearm drawn, I'm like, get on the ground, and there's reason for this, and they don't get on the ground, I'm gonna shoot them. Fuck it.
Yes, you don't need to be.
like if you don't have the ability to, and if I know they know English, and I'm saying it in English,
right.
If you don't have the ability to follow the most simple instruction, get the fuck on the ground because I've got my firearm drawn, and there's a problem, and we've got to calm everybody down to fix this problem. You don't get on the ground, you're part of the problem.
Right.
And you hear from the flip side. Right, so from the minority side or Hispanic or black or whatever, you pick it. They're like, well, we have to challenge it because we've had so many things, so many wrongs done to us over the years. I don't give a fuck's been wrong with you over the years. An officer has their gun drawn, screaming you get on the ground. Don't run.
Right.
Don't talk back.
Yeah.
Don't advance the officer in an aggressive manner. Don't, like, I can't, and this is me and my own world that I live in, and then I know I'm crazy in these things. That's why I'm not an officer, for good reason. Why is that allowed?
Like, why is that allowed by whom?
So we don't allow
it. By society?
Right, because like you guys, you can't just instantly pop out a taser and tase. You got to have all these rules, and you got to cover your ass, and you got to make sure they do this right.
Why is that allowed? Right. Because the Beyoncés of the world say it's okay, and the Jay-Z's and the
you could just go down the
and
list.
you could go down the list. Like you could say all kinds of celebrities and influential people in the news media are saying that it is okay to basically act with such disgusting disrespect. I mean, there's no respect in this country for authority. Like,
how do we? Because granted, we can start dealing with parenting our kids better and things like that, but we've got a bulk of the population that's part of the problem right now. So we can't go back and reverse parent them. We can't go back and fix. What do we? Like, do we increase the penalties when they do that?
I don't. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to say something. I don't think it's fixable. I think we're at a point in our country where this is where we're at, and it's going to continue to get worse. I think we're at a point in our country, to be honest with you, where we're looking at the downside of our country. We're looking at something's going to be different in 100 years. We may not exist as a country. We may be broken up into different regions. Texas.
When I'm traveling, people go, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "That beautiful country of Texas."
That's right. That's right. But I do think that we're on. I think as a country, and I think it's our culture. If you look at the culture of our country now, how split we are, how identity politics and group politics is just everything right now. You're seeing it. You're seeing California go further left. You're seeing Texas. We're staying kind of where we are a little bit, but we're kind of drifting left. But we're compared to the rest of the country, we're pretty darn conservative. You're seeing the coast get further away from the middle. I think we're on a downward slope. Where there's other issues.
You don't think it's fixable?
No, I don't. I think our country's on a path where our debt issues are just the way our government, our central government keeps expanding just exponentially, and it's not slowing down. Not really. I think we're on a downward slope. And I think culturally we've hit a peak of. We've talked about this the other day where our population is so spoiled with the wealth of our country. They don't know any better. They don't have experience with third world countries and third world police departments and third world governments who truly violate human rights on a daily basis in ways you can't imagine.
Right.
There's huge sense of entitlement.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Yes, I would agree. I totally agree. But I listened to a song yesterday, kind of coming back to what we were talking about, if you don't mind, before. I listened to a song yesterday by this artist that I had the chance to meet. He's a cop, and his name is One Time, right?
Okay.
He's a rapper, black guy, stellar cop, cool guy. Met him at Police Week. He gave me a CD, and I hadn't really sat to listen because I'm one of those lyrics persons. Like I like what are they saying?
Yeah,
you know, what are they talking about? And this guy, I mean, I put the CD in yesterday because I had to do some stuff around the house. I was listening to the lyrics, and you know, he touches on so many of these things that we're talking about. You know, but one of them is you talked about how it's not a big deal, you know, when officers are getting, or I think it was one of you said it. One of his is no one cries, right?
It's true.
No one cries. And that song said we are getting killed in an alarming rate, and nobody cares. Like nobody says anything. Nobody thinks about the family. Right, the aftermath and the family, and there's really nothing out there for them. Like, and another one of his rap songs is called Affiliation, and I love that because he talks about the military too, because he's an army dog, right? Okay. So, you know, but it's just the messages are so amazingly powerful, and they're so positive. One of the things he's like, you won't hear one cuss word on this whole album, you know, you won't hear it, you know, and I'm just totally impressed with it because it needs to be said. These are things that need to be said. But you know, this guy's never going to get a label. He's never going to get a deal on a label because that's not what the country wants to see right now. And so just kind of what we were talking about, that was something that popped into my mind, is like, you know, the good stuff now has no more value in this country, right? I think, like I always tell my kids, you can only control you. You know, I can control what I teach my children. At the end of the day, they're going to only control themselves and what they do and what they stand for, what they teach theirs. I don't know if we can come back from this. I still hope that we can. I know that there's a new, as far as police work goes, there's a new culture. There's a new breed coming up in the ranks of police work,
which is
true. And they are learning about things like post-traumatic stress and its effects on officers, and they're fresh ideas, and they're trying to, you know, we're making some leeway on that, but
some good things that I do think. So that's a large question, right? Can we come back from this? But let's take it from we'll shrink it down a little bit. As police officers, what can we do? And we can humanize ourselves, right? We can reach out more as patrol officers, get out and speak to everybody that's in your community, so they know you as a person. They know he's not a uniform. Because I think, generally speaking, the reason nobody cries is because it's a uniform that got shot. It's not a human being. It's just a uniform. Yeah. You know, and so they don't. There's no real knowledge that this was a human with family, who went home at night and played with his kids, or took his wife to dinners, or took care of his mom who maybe was sick every night, or dad. There's no connection that, hey, this is a human being, a real person just like you, who's trying to get through society, trying to get through life the same as you, that's trying to just make it. And he chose a career because of maybe he, you know, like most of us, wants to help people, and it's a tough career because of the job.
Or it chose him.
Which really is the
One
truth.
time says that too.
Which
I didn't choose it. It chose me.
It's true.
Because let me tell you, one of the hardest things in the aftermath in my round 3 was trying to explain these things to my kids. You know, like when I went back on duty. You know, my little girl. You know, she was so strong when it happened. You know, I remember talking to her from the trauma room. I'm laying there with a hole in my chest, and Chris comes over and hands me the phone, and she's like, "Hey, Mama." I said, "Hey, baby." She goes, "So you got shot, huh?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You got shot in the titty, huh?" I said, "Yeah, I did." She goes, did it hurt? I said, yeah, it did. You know, she was good.
Yeah.
My kid, my son, who was in high school at the time, my oldest, not so much. Yeah. This affected him deeply from the beginning. So then I'm home, and she was very strong. She had her moments, but she was very strong, and he was very shaken by it.
Yeah.
When it was time to go back to work, boom, he rises up. He's very strong. He's reassuring his sister, his baby sister, who is now falling apart.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was almost like, yeah, you got shot, but I'm talking to you and you sound good. And even though I see this mess that it's left, but I still have you. You're here. Right. My kid, my son, who was a bit older, was more like, you got shot and then you fucking went and chased him. Like, why would you do that? So he was kind of mad. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a valid, valid
typical
question for your kid,
estrogen
right? For your kid to go,
there,
why would you do that? Like, did you not care about us? I had to have those types of conversations with my kids. This past August, last year, right around Harvey time, I had to have that conversation with my daughter. Like, how many years out are we? And she and I had to sit down with my child, who said, Mom, I had so much anger toward you. I felt like I hated you. This is just last summer. So imagine, this is, like I said, it's still a very real thing, right? Because now she's older and stuff. But imagine trying to explain, that this is just how you're wired. I don't know how. Why would you go back? Like, standing at the door, crying, no, Mom, don't go, Push my kid aside, go to work like that, leave her there crying,
Yeah, that's tough.
What kind of, as a mother, I used to guilt myself. I think we do that as cops a lot, it's a lot of guilt, especially the mamas. Nothing against you daddies.
No, it's different.
But the mamas, it's very different. I'm like, what kind of mother does this? What kind of mother am I? Why am I out here taking care of all you baby kids, right? And I'm not home taking care of mine, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was very difficult to try to explain to her, why would you want to go back out there? Why would you do this to us? She never said, why would you do this to us? But it was like, why would you want to go back out there?
That's
why?
What she's saying.
Yes, that's what she's saying, right. Why would you want to do it? How do you explain that? Well, it's just how I'm wired, baby. It's how God made me. And so when they say it's what you signed up for, no. And then you say, this is a profession that we chose or that we were called to do. I believe I was called to do this. Yeah. I came out of my mother's womb. I was put on this earth for this. Yeah. Not just police work and my children and my husband, but what I'm doing with it now, which is trying to bring that awareness. And that's all I can, that's the best way I can to explain it is it's just mommy. It's how God made mommy. Yeah. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I don't love you, but that was hard for them at such a young age. They had to grow up, but we got to keep talking.
They don't get it,
No. Yeah. And there's nothing in place for the family. No. There's nothing in place for the spouses. No. For the kids. And I have some really great people that I'm working with that are trying to change that now, where we're offering stuff for the families and we're offering stuff, the extended, like this is not, it didn't just happen to me. I mean, you saw how deeply it affects my friend over here. This is my brother. You know what I'm saying? You know that. No, I don't have to explain that to you. But the average people out there are not thinking of that. I remember Workman's Comp telling me, well, when we finally had to justify why I needed some counseling. Really? Oh. Yeah. Really? Well, we'll give you 5 sessions. Well, what about me and my family? Can my family go? No, it's just for you. How is that? Like, seriously? Yes.
It's so ass backwards.
It is. It is.
Just doesn't make any sense.
But you know what? At the end of the day, it's not the state of Texas that gets in that patrol car with me. No. It's not my administration that gets in that patrol car with me. It is not my husband or my children or my partners. It is me. It is me. I get in there, and so I'm responsible. Yeah. I am responsible to address these issues that I know that I'm going through. And there are ways to get them addressed without having to go through your command, without having to go through your unit.
You just got to get creative.
You just have to. You have to do the research. You have to do the work. There are ways. I started seeing a therapist who specializes in critical incident stress management. And she actually used to specialize in first responders and oil riggers. Sounds kind of weird, but
no, they go through a lot.
But they go a lot. She worked the Deepwater Horizon event, actually.
Oh, wow.
And Sherry is very experienced in this field, and she worked me through both of my shootings. She talked me through, and I sought her after my first shooting, and I didn't really have any issues after that first shoot. I really, truly didn't. And so because my opponent from round 3 didn't come after me after round 1, I think I underestimated or didn't even think of it, that it had an ability to come for me after round 2, right? But Sherry, I learned a few things from her in that first shooting that I remembered. And so when I went back to her to deal with the stuff after the second time when I got shot, she really taught me a lot. She really taught me a lot. And she knew when it was time to refer me to a doctor, that, like a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And she did that. That was what I like to refer to as me when I realized I had a fight. I'm like, okay, motherfuckers, I'm in this fight now. All right. So I'm going to go back to the corner real quick while the bell rings, right? And I have to regroup, and I have to get a corner man, right? So I got to get a new corner man here. So that was Sherry.
Yeah.
And then she referred me to a cut man, which was my psychiatrist, right? But then there's the guy that holds the spit bucket that nobody ever really thinks twice. You could probably name 2 people in a 3-man corner if you're an avid boxing fan, right? That's Freddie Roach, and that's so and so, and that, you know. But you never really know who the spit bucket person is, right? That is the most important person in my corner that I had, figuratively speaking, because the person holding that spit bucket was my husband, Chris.
Yeah. It always is.
And I must have puked in it. I must have peed in it and spit in it and cried in it and shit in it, you know, all of it. And he's holding it, and he's holding it. And so now who's there for him? Right? Yeah, essentially me, but
not really.
If I'm in my own head at the time, I'm not going to be able to do that. They need somebody. Yeah. And Sherry was there for my family. And she, I know for a fact that this woman, she helps first responders outside of the realm of their command.
Nice. Yeah.
And that is what we need more of. We need to give officers and military alike, but we need to give them an option.
Right.
To talk to somebody that's not going to run back. I mean, now let's face it. If I had been in a position where I did not need to be in a car, she certainly would have a duty to recommend that I'm not in a car, right? But
it's not a universal
But it's not
situation.
like that for every single buddy. And I like to say this, like, okay, we just met, so what do you see when you look at me? Be nice, motherfucker. Like, what do you see when you look at me? I'm asking you for this for a reason. Like, you know a little bit about me. What is it that you see after you hear me tell you my story?
Well, before the story, you're just walking up in the introduction in the house, is that you have a forced politeness about you. You're very guarded. You observe everything. You noticed about 10 things in my house before you actually made eye contact with me. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I see. Yeah. But I'm not normal.
Yeah.
I'm different. So it's like I'm watching all these perimeter things before you say anything.
So now we've been talking here for about an hour or so.
You're strong. You're confident in what you're doing. Okay. You know your direction. Yeah. You're not there yet.
Yeah, but you didn't say weak. You didn't say you're weak. No. You're a coward. No. And I've told you that I was fucked up. You know, I used to find new places in my house to cry and shit. Right. My point with that is, when you look at me and when people hear this story, they're not thinking, what a weak bitch, right? What a weak little thing.
Oh, right. No.
They're not thinking that. They're thinking, this is courage. This is strength. I am you. I am you. And I say this when I'm speaking. When you look at me, the things you just said you saw, warrior, strength, a mother, a wife, a police officer, you know, I've even heard, you're a badass bitch, right? Which that's one of my favorites. Yeah, like, you know, that's one of my favorites.
You're like, thank you, it was nice. Right? Thank you very much.
Somebody told me, where was I? I think I was in, oh my gosh, where was I? Said I wasn't I was all that, and I was not a soup sandwich. I had never heard that. I was like, what's a soup sandwich? I guess that's like a shit bag. What would we call a shit bag? Okay. Yeah, soup like, sandwich. I love that. I was like, I like soup. What? And sandwiches. But anyway, my point is that all of these things, I am you, right? And I just told you, I have PTSD, right? And personally, I think that gives me more credibility to clear a room with you than anybody. I work with this man. He's been on calls with me. He knows I know what I'm doing when I'm out there, and we need to move some furniture around up in this room. We're going to do it, and I'm going to be right there with you, and then we'll deal with the rest later. You know what I mean? But my point is that I had to do the work. Yeah. Because we can sit here and we can bitch and we can complain about how we aren't being prepared and how we're not getting the training and how our families aren't getting this and how, but what are we going to do about it? I knew I was always going to get back in the car. Yeah. If God let me do that. Yeah. I also knew that I was alive for a reason and there was something I was supposed to be doing with it. I maybe didn't know exactly what that was in the beginning, But I want to be that example to, you know, the officers out there going through this stuff. I want to be that example to my military veteran brothers and sisters who I've actually lost about 3 to suicide. We're losing officers to suicide at a crazy alarming rate. 2017.
Huge.
We had 4 officers in 2017. Well, I'm not talking total line of duty deaths, but we had like 40, not 4, I'm sorry, I said 4. 44 or 40 something officers, this is an approximate, killed by gunfire amongst all of the LODDs, right? Line of duty deaths. 40 something of them were killed by gunfire. Do you want to know what the reported number was for 2017? Like 140 due to suicide. That's reported. That's just police. Firefighters, 108, somewhere around there. This is a freaking problem. And you know what? That lights a fire in my ass. You can probably hear it as I'm talking. This is a problem. We have a problem here.
Right. So almost four times.
I don't math, but yeah, if you say so, a lot.
Committed suicide as opposed to
a lot.
We're shot. Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's
Why? So this
you
is
gotta
what
hide it. I mean, we know why.
we
you don't have the tools that not addressing it.
We don't have to hide it.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that, you know.
No, but that's the thought process.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's the thought process.
Yeah.
Is we got to hide this. We got to keep it to ourselves. We don't tell anybody. Bull crap. I tell everybody.
Yeah.
I tell everybody all over the country, people I don't even know, the most private and intimate struggles of my journey.
One of the things, possible solutions. I love solutions.
Yeah.
Possible solutions is one of the things that when I went in the service is, you know, you always have, every time you go to a new assignment or new base or whatever. So it was my first one. You always have a mentor or a buddy or whatever you call it, right? Yeah. That they're going to kind of take you around and show you the ropes and all this kind of stuff. Literally, I got picked up at the airport.
When was this?
This was like...
I'm sorry, when?
What
year was that?
This was 9 months ago, and damn it, what the
Seriously, what I said there?
But so I got picked up at the airport.
Yeah.
We had planes, so it wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
Or, you know,
Propellers.
Yeah,
they
propellers.
didn't come in on a horse.
And then and I wasn't taken to where I lived to housing. I wasn't taken to you know, my tech sergeant or the military liaison. I wasn't taken anywhere. I was taken straight to mental health. And I was like, oh, where are we going?
Really?
Ronnie was the guy that took me there, had taken me there. So Ronnie's, what the fuck are we doing here? He was like, dude, I leave in 2 days for retirement. And he goes, I know what you're about to go through. Start your file. So I had a 2.5, 3 hour deal in mental health before I even, you know, got to open my suitcase. And that's how it started for me and my team.
So it was always like a little...
Step one, like you're gonna get in front of this shit.
there.
Yeah. Like get in front of it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and that was one of the things, and I don't know, again, from a police officer deal, I don't think y'all have the same levels.
Hell
of
no.
No.
Hell
what
no.
I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see, you know, and not just necessarily me, but I would like to be able to get my presentation into the academy for every new.
Yeah. See, this is what I meant when I said we need to prepare officers for what can happen. I understand we can't. There's nothing that really prepares you for these kinds of incidents,
right,
or whatever we might experience. Nothing can prepare you for that. But giving officers, potential officers, new officers, officers who are serving now, the knowledge. So one of the things that really stuck out with me for me as you're speaking is when you went into round 3. As you like to call it, when you went into that, or the championship rounds. We'll just say that. It's the championship rounds, right? The round 3, 5th round, whatever you want to call it, 12th round. What helped you? You dived into knowledge. You educated yourself on what the fuck you're dealing with. Because your first thought you had was, I'm fucking crazy.
I'm going nuts, yeah.
And what do I do? So, but then you found out through knowledge, through diving yourself and reading about the situation you're in, you're not crazy. You're dealing with a natural physiological response to what you went through. And knowing that, just from what you're telling me, made all the difference in the world in how you approached it and how you went into that round. Like everything, it's about knowledge, and it's about developing the skills to deal with whatever fight you're dealing with, whether it's MMA, boxing, or PTSD. So I think that's what I mean when give officers the resources and the knowledge to deal with it, like when, you know, as he's going in and they already know, hey, He's going into some
Yeah,
fucked up shit.
that was
We're getting ahead of
that
it.
story you just told. That was
Well,
wow.
And that's
it wasn't normal
forward
back then.
thinking.
Yeah,
That's
no,
forward
absolutely,
thinking.
because that was a really long time ago that happened.
Motherfucker.
Well, you know, I mean,
Hey, you need a new earring? I'm looking. This is right through there.
those trenches are a bitch. I mean, they figured that out after about 5 years of
Yeah.
mowing people down. They better get some guys in the middle.
No, but I think you're right. I really do think you're right. And by that same token, you know, I say, yeah, give us the resources. But if you're not getting them, you know, my mom used to tell me, you know, I'm not always going to be able to give you the answers. Because, you know, sometimes I would say, how do you spell this? And she'd say, go look it up. Oh, that used to tick me off. And I used to be like, maybe she doesn't know how to spell it, right? Sorry, Mom, if she listens, right? But she used to say, you know, go look it up. Or, you know, if I asked, what does this mean? Or, you know, it was always go look it up. And she would say, and I would get mad sometimes, you know, Mom, why can't you just tell me? Like, can you just tell me real quick? I'm writing, you know. And she would say, you know, I'm not going to always be around to give you the answers.
Yeah.
And I used to be like, what? You never give me the answers. She says, I always give you the answers. By showing you how to find the answers, I'm giving you the answer, you know? And I'll never forget that. You know, there's times where I will just give my daughter the answer to the question she wants or something. There's times I'll say, go look it up or go do this. Or, you know what, you Google this all the time. Why don't you Google that? And then I want you to look through what Google gives you. And then you want to have to decipher what's credible and what's not credible. You're going to have to do the work. It all boils down to that. You know, there's not going to always be somebody there to give you the answers. We, as law enforcement officers, that's our ass in the car.
Yeah.
That's ours. We have to do the work, you know?
Well, and I agree 100%. 100%
To some degree, you got to do it.
Yeah, my only catch to that is that you guys, so often, police officers as a whole, blanket statement, are strapped with resources anyway.
Right.
You know, because I mean, you don't get paid like superstars, you know, all these kinds of deals, and you have to be a little careful. So it's just, my thing is, yes, I agree with you, but there's got to be some way to help fund this for officers.
I agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
That's the only wild card in what
Yeah,
you're
no,
saying.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that, but I do believe that as an officer or an individual, let's just talk about this as a human issue, right? Because it is.
Yeah.
That sometimes our bodies are telling us, and we're not, because we don't know any better. We don't know. I remember when I went back on duty, I would have right here this rash, like these little itty bitty bumps, looked like a bunch of little flea bites or ant bites there. And on the top of my left foot, I would scratch it over my boot with my other boot so much that I would actually break the skin underneath my boot.
crap,
That's how hard I would. I didn't know what it was. And sometimes I would go like, Sarge, what is that? He's like, you got a bunch of bumps there. I don't know what it is. Do you know that I found out in doing all the research that one of the ways that your body will tell you, especially with post-traumatic stress issues, is that you will get skin rashes and skin, you know, some people get hives and itches, and other people get really bad acne. Here's some other things.
I didn't know that.
No.
As much as I've read and read, like,
yes, I read that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
used to get that. Gynecological issues can start to surface for women. Whereas you might think, oh gosh, you know, like I'm just having, you know, a problem down there, you know, for no other reason. And then you go to the doctor and he's like, there's nothing going on. Like, you're fine. There's nothing going on. And I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Like, something's going on. No, there's nothing going on. I didn't know this at the time, right? I did not know it at the time. But, you know, my hair was falling out.
Yeah.
I was constantly, like, I couldn't shit, and then I couldn't stop shitting. So it was either one or the other. Hands would tremble. I was always dry in my mouth.
Yeah.
I would get
common.
really, and I'm just kind of throwing these out there because for some people that may tune into your podcast, you know, they may be bordering like, no, I think I'm good, but you know, it obviously it affects your sex drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So you're talking about. Not only was I having all of these other issues going on, you know, I was, like I said, I would see those eyes everywhere, right? Yeah. That's a damn buzzkill right there for intimacy. Like, I wasn't feeling very sexy. I wasn't feeling, especially with half a tit, you know what I'm saying? Stitches and scars and, you know, so this is affecting.
I'm not laughing, but I'm laughing,
this is affecting like every aspect of my relationship, you know, it's like, hey, you don't touch me anymore. And then when he goes to touch me, I'm like, don't touch me. I don't want to feel like being touched, right? So it's poor guy. He couldn't win for. He didn't know what to do for me. So there's just all kinds of things going on. But these were some of the symptoms of what I was not addressing at the time. All the post-traumatic stress issues that I wasn't addressing, the rash, all of these issues, and people don't really realize that that's what could be your body telling you that something is not going right now. Stress affects the body in so many ways. It fascinates me in so many different ways. It's just so fascinating. And when I started to get a lid on things, I did three things. I made a vow to tell everybody in law enforcement, veterans, just human being, not affiliated with military or law enforcement. I made a vow that I would tell everybody about that possibility of round 3. Because I believe that the more people see it, because when they're looking at me, they don't see weakness, that they'll go, oh, well, okay, I'm not weak either then, I also made a vow to address those issues with my family, and we were going to be unfiltered and transparent with those types of things. So it was working on my family, putting my family first. Really putting them first. I'm not going to go into work. Now obviously I'm in a position now where I could do this. I travel so much that I'm not full-time employed with the PD. I'm as a reservist now because I travel. So I have the option to put them first. But I put them first. And then the third thing was to continue to educate myself on how post-traumatic stress works, how traumatic brain injuries work, how they affect us, how they affect our health, and some of the ways to relieve some of that stress. Because you have to find that. And if you don't find that outlet, for me, a lot of years ago, it was boxing. It's not so much boxing now. I'm actually in the process of trying to find something else to fall in love with that way. I don't have it all figured out.
When you get into your 60s, like painting right here is good, and a little clay work.
I was going to reach for my cup. You got me on that one. I was like, 60s, I think I look pretty good for 60. I don't know.
Yeah, hell yeah. For 60, you look amazing.
I think Jason was telling me that you were older than us.
Yes.
So you're what, 70?
Well, if you're in your 60s, I got to be at least in my mid-70s.
Yeah, but at least you look like that, so that's good.
So I'm good.
You don't have to be shy about it.
Do this. But I'll tell you, so things, just to touch on this, we'll have to close, but a lot of the symptoms there that you had discussed, for men, you may not have ED.
Right, it may just
have some fucking stress.
Yeah.
Cool.
I talk to a lot of guys who talk about that.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, but.
Right.
Like, no. And so sometimes it's just a matter of, I don't disagree with medications. Right. I don't like them. For me, I've never used any. But sometimes medications are a step.
Right.
And they get you, okay, I need 15 steps to get to some level of healing. Use medication for the first 3. That can work. Then there's all these other things you can do. You've got to have outlets. Boxing for you, gym
I was
for me,
I was totally
whatever.
against medicine, like you said. I was that way, and I get this question a lot. I don't think I've ever traveled to speak anywhere and no one's asked me this, either while I'm up there or once we're done. Did you have to go on meds? Yes, I did go on meds, and I went on meds. I hate it. That was one of the things I was afraid of. And a lot of cops are the same way. They're like, I want to go see a shrink, but they're just going to write me a script and put me on meds, which is why you've got to find the right people to help you through these things. So like I said, I worked with Sherry, who deals with CISM, critical incident stress management. That's a therapist that she's not writing scripts or anything. She's teaching me and helping me through stuff. And then she sent me over to talk to the psychiatrist because she recognized that I wasn't sleeping because I had so much anxiety. So I was getting no sleep. You can't heal. Your body cannot heal if it's not getting sleep, right? So I wasn't sleeping because I was just having so much anxiety. My anxiety levels stemming from the shooting, and when I would sleep, I would have nightmares. So I wasn't getting restful sleep. My brain wouldn't shut off. Like I would lay there and it would just still be just everything, And so when I went to go see the doctor, my psychiatrist, he gave me a prescription. He was like, we're going to have to, because one of the things is, like with any relationship, you have to have that trust, right? So I says, listen, I really don't want to go on meds. if there's any way that you can help me through this stuff and not put me on meds, I would really like to do it that way. So he said, okay, well, let's talk about it. And we talked about it. We said, so I'd say about a few visits in, he says, I think you need me to give you something that's going to help you sleep and something to help you with the anxiety. So he put me on a medication that helped with the anxiety/depression plus something to sleep. I remember taking the sleep medicine a few times here and there as I felt I needed it. It wasn't long before I didn't need it anymore. The medicine that I was on helped me with the anxiety, and I didn't feel medicated. I didn't feel like I was in a fog. And I mean, I'm not going to mention the name of the medicine because that's something people need to talk to their doctors about.
Yes, absolutely.
But it was a medication that I did not feel medicated. I didn't feel any kind of way, but I did feel like I was alleviated of that heightened feeling of feeling like, you know, oh, something bad. Like, you know, like I felt that all the time.
Just, just a little bit of the weight lifted.
It took it off, and I started to do the homework that he would give me to do. And I think, you know, we made a good team because it is your corner.
It is.
You're in a fight and you go back to the corner. And
that was the
you
key
got to do
point.
what your cornermen. Yeah. And it was a good team, and I did what I was asked to do. And when I felt like he was pushing a little too much, I said so, because I don't know if you noticed, I kind of say what I mean and mean what I say, right? And it was a good team. Within about 10 months, I was able to start weaning off of the medicine. I remember even doing it differently at home, you know, with his stamp of approval. You know, I wouldn't have to take it every single day. I would do 3 or 4 times a week. And then it went to 3 times. So we started to wean me off. Then before it, I wasn't even on it for a full year, and it helped me. So I'm not one of those people that's like I used to say, I'm totally against it. I was that girl.
Well, in theory,
but for some people, it really works.
And that's what I'm saying is that it's a little different for everybody. Some people, I know I've got some buddies that have been on it for years, and they need to stay on it for years more. And I've got people like myself and other friends that have never touched any, and everything from took it a year, 6 months, or 2 years. It's different for
everybody.
The circumstances are different. How they react are different. Everything is so. Medicine is a step, but I think personally that outlet is almost more important.
Super important. I would agree with that statement. I would agree with that statement because I don't think that, and I still believe this. I still believe this to be true, even though that I'm not a whole anti-medicine person, because for some people they do need to have it. But I am one of those people. I'm not one of those magic pill people. Like, you know, I'd like to get 75 pounds off my ass, right? I don't believe there's a magic pill out there that I could take to make it happen. I probably wouldn't want to take it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I would.
I'm like, what are the side effects? You're like,
but, you know, there's not. You got to do the work, and the same thing goes. You got to do the work if you want to lose the weight. And you know, like I say, you go to the gym and you lift weights because you want to get firm into it. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah, of course.
But you have to keep doing it, right? And the same thing goes if you need a doctor. You know, like if you're having stomach problems or you're having, you know, foot problems, you know, you go to a podiatrist. You're having woman problems, you go to a gynecologist. Nobody raises an eyebrow or bats an eye, right? If you're having issues mentally, struggling emotionally with post-traumatic stress issues that you know is unaddressed, I mean, you know who you are. You know, know who you are out there, and your spouse knows. Hey, people know. It's likely your partners know. People that are close to you know. But unless you go and do the work, you know, you're not going to get anywhere. It's not going to go away. That opponent will keep pummeling you and pummeling you and pummeling you until the bell rings, and it's not going to ring. That's the thing. It's not going to ring. Either you're going to go down, or it's just going to keep pummeling you until you do. And that's something I want people to remember. Like, I don't have all the answers. Like, I still have my days.
And nobody has all the answers.
Yeah. I still have my days. I still, since we're being really honest here, I mean, my daughter and I ended up in a hug yesterday, and I was crying and telling her, you know, I'm so sorry for putting you through the things that I've put you through, because she was joking about the cats, what we were talking about, the cats, you know, and how, it was little guilt gifts, you know, and I don't remember how it even came up, and she says, oh, Mom, really? And I go, no, really, they were guilt gifts, you know, and she's like, Mama, I don't want you to feel that way. And of course, you know, she gets me. So I'm holding her and I'm hugging her. I'm just like, I'm so proud of you. And the way you've been able to pull through all of this. But, you know, we still have our moments. I still have my days where I don't want to fuck with people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, keep on fighting. Always keep fighting. Not today. You know, I still have those days where I crawl into my little foxhole, you know, but this is something Sherry told me. And I like to tell people, and I'll leave you with this and I'll shut up. Sherry tells me, it's okay to crawl into your little foxhole. Like, it's okay to have a bad day. Just don't unpack and stay there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
I like that.
I love that.
No, it's so true.
Right?
So
Isn't
true.
it? It is. It is.
If you don't have bad days, you probably have bigger issues.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, I agree. But we just need to keep talking about it and not be so shy and feel embarrassed about it. I know who I am and what I stand for and what I'm capable of and what I'm not.
Yeah.
And Sherry taught me to be kind, how to be kind to myself. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but we're not good at that.
We're not taught that.
No, we're not. To be kind to
Today's
myself.
generation might be taught that, but we weren't taught that.
To be kind? What?
Like,
what is
that
this
even-
be kind to yourself that you speak of, right?
Yeah.
But we got to do it, man. We got to do it. If we expect to get through this career and not have some type of juju from doing what we do, you can't unsee what you see. And, you know, and if we're not doing the work to try to get that for ourselves and our agencies aren't doing that and we're not speaking out against this stigma that is very much alive in law enforcement and in military, then we're just complaining about a problem that we're not trying to be part of a solution, and that gets you nowhere.
Right.
You know?
And we do it and look for solutions, and we are. Stuff like this. I mean, you have no idea how many people are going to watch this. Be like, oh, crap, I got to go see somebody. Oh, crap, you know what? Yeah, oh, wait. There's 3 people who were dealing with a whole bunch of shit on the deal, and they all look all right. They're good. They're strong people, but they got bad days. Wow, I got a lot of bad days. I need help.
You know,
make me weak. You know that.
There are doctors who you don't even have to leave your home. You can do it by phone. You can do it by Skype.
Yeah, Skype is a big one.
It's a big one. Yeah, and it's effective. It's effective. So, you know.
And cheaper.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But you got to keep. Hey, I'm in my own house. Technically, I don't have to sit on your sofa, right? No, but it's not a death sentence, man. It's not a death sentence, and unfortunately, we have those brothers and sisters, military and law enforcement, first responders, you know, firefighters, and it's medics, you know, all of us first responders. If we can just remind one another that it's not a death sentence, I think we can make some progress where this is concerned. To stomp out that stigma. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen in your career or my career.
It could start, though.
But it could start. And I think that, I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? It just makes me, remember that scene in that movie, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective? You remember that movie?
I remember that movie.
Which one?
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Which scene?
Okay, the scene where he's in the office and he's like, can you feel it? Can you? Remember? Right? Do you remember that scene? It was so vulgar. I loved it. Yeah, he's hilarious. That scene right there is what I do to those 3 bastards every single time I get to do this with somebody.
Which is
Can
powerful.
you feel it? I pull a freaking Ace Ventura Pet Detective. I think we should all get up and do it. No, I'm not.
No. Not a lot of space. Old hips.
Old hips. Yeah, okay.
You speak for yourself with the old hips.
We're gonna close it up, but this is big. I love it. Thanks for coming out, man. That was thank you.
And you know, they can use this as a resource.
Absolutely.
This information, if anybody ever reaches out, you can use it as a resource. I'll tell you what, I'll take you, I'll guide you, but I'm not gonna do the work for you.
No, you shouldn't.
Yeah. No, I got my own damn work to do.
That's what I'm saying. We got plenty to deal with. Like that. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's
hey,
awesome.
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I'm looking for my supplements now, so I can.
Yeah, we need to. We gotta go raid the closet, people. So we got more
right.
important things to do.
Thanks,
No magic
guys.
pills, but it's good.
Yeah, hey, no. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
no,
Though.
it's good. I
Absolutely.
love
Thank
it.
you.
All right, thank you guys. We will see you guys next time. I don't even know what date it is. The next time.